Chapter 1045. At the entrance of the pawn shop, the one-legged woman shook her head. She did not want to speak. Yi Xian's backer made her speechless. Xiao Dao smiled. There are no ifs in this world. Also, Yi Xian's true strength is not because he has a few backers. The one-legged woman turned to look at Xiao Dao. The prophet. Xiao Dao said softly, those who are not within the rules, some are heartless, some are sentimental. The one who is heartless, other than wanting to die, he doesn't care about anything. I don't know what to say about this kind of person. As for the two who are sentimental, their sentiments are small, selfish, Xiao Dao. But the prophet's sentiments are the great Dao, the true great Dao. In this world, there are many bad people, but there are also good people. In this world, there are really some people who will sacrifice themselves for all living beings in the world. You can say that this kind of person is stupid, but you can't help but admire him. Saying that, she looked at the prophet. The prophet wants others to help him, but why are there so many people helping him? Even the Supreme Tendo chose to give him a chance? Because he is selfless, truly selfless. What he does is not for himself at all, but for all living beings. He cares about the common people, and for all living beings in the world, he does not hesitate to sacrifice himself. This kind of behavior, even the former Tendo could not do. That's not right. The Tendo does not have evil intentions towards the living beings in the world, he is just disappointed. And this prophet, although he is also disappointed, he is trying his best to do it, to save. The one-legged woman was silent. Xiao Dao looked at the one-legged woman. Do you really think that he can have such good fortune because of the plain-dressed woman? The plain-dressed woman can be feared, but not respected. Take you for example, do you respect or fear the prophet? The one-legged woman said, respect. Xiao Dao nodded. For such a person to have such great fortune, what's abnormal about it? The one-legged woman suddenly said, the fifth dimension calamity. Xiao Dao smiled. You want to know about the fifth dimension calamity? The one-legged woman nodded. Xiao Dao shook his head. I can't tell you the details. The one-legged woman frowned slightly. At this time, Xiao Dao said, the fifth dimension tribulation is the tribulation of all living beings. This tribulation targeted all living beings, and the only ones who could resolve this tribulation were the living beings themselves. Unfortunately, all living beings only had greed in their hearts. Of course, we can't blame them because, as she said that, she pointed at herself, because we, the strongest people, are also the greediest people. If we are not greedy, how can we reach the peak of this world? The prophet understands this, and so he is guilty. We understand this, but we are not guilty. Whether it was humans or other creatures, they all felt that the world owed them something, and they could demand it from the world. This was especially so for some people. After they borrowed the power of the world to become stronger, they still wanted to defy the heavens and so on. In reality, the world never owed the masses anything. However, what do all living beings give to the world in return? The one-legged woman fell into deep thought. Xiao Dao smiled and said, the prophet was very smart. He knew that in order to change, he had to enlighten all living beings. However, he later understood that in order to enlighten all living beings, he must first have the opportunity. And in order to have the opportunity, he must first block the fifth dimension tribulation. As she said that, she shook her head. He really worried himself to death. The one-legged woman suddenly said, he won't succeed. Xiao Dao softly said, I know. The one-legged woman looked at Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao softly said, no matter what, I still hope he succeeds. There is no harm in making this world a bit more beautiful. The one-legged woman suddenly said, who are you? Xiao Dao blinked. The one-legged woman shook her head. I guess your mother. After saying that, she turned around and left. Xiao Dao's face was full of black lines. Civilization. Sword sect, floating mountain. In the vegetable garden, Yi Xian was watering the plants, but he couldn't calm down no matter what. He had too many things on his mind. At this time, the mysterious woman suddenly said, Little Xian, come here. Little Xian. This was the name given to him by the mysterious woman. He was also speechless, unable to resist. Yi Xian walked to the mysterious woman's side. The mysterious woman smiled and said, "Can't calm down?" Yi Xian nodded. "Too many things on my mind." The mysterious woman blinked. "Do you want me to help you?" A bad feeling rose in Yi Xian's heart. Just as he was about to speak, the mysterious woman suddenly waved her right hand. In an instant, Yi Xian felt his vision go black, unable to see anything. A moment later, Yi Xian looked around. It was pitch black, unable to see anything. Yi Xian frowned. He said, "Senior?" There was no response. Yi Xian sensed the prison pagoda, but he was shocked to find that the pagoda had disappeared. It must have been taken away by the mysterious woman. Yi Xian's face sank. He looked around. The other party should want him to calm down. Could he calm down in this pitch-black night? Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, then he sat down cross-legged and calmed his mind. At first, it was fine. But gradually, Yi Xian found that he still couldn't calm down. He had too many things to think about. Not only could he not calm down, but he was also becoming more and more agitated. However, Yi Xian didn't force himself to leave because he wanted to calm down as well. Outside, the mysterious woman looked at Xiao Ta in her hand and smiled. "This Xiao Ta is quite interesting. It's similar to Dad's pagoda." Behind the mysterious woman, the white-haired old man nodded slightly. "Indeed." With that, he paused slightly and then said, "Miss, can he comprehend it?" The mysterious woman said indifferently, "I'm giving him a chance. Whether he can grasp it or not depends on his own fortune. His heart is truly too impetuous. A person can be flashy, but a sword can't. To do something, one must be serious and focused. If he could understand this, then his state of mind in the way of the sword would definitely rise to a higher level." The white-haired old man nodded. The mysterious woman suddenly knocked on the prison pagoda. "Let me in to play." The prison pagoda shook slightly, as if saying something. The mysterious woman narrowed her eyes. "You won't let me in?" With that, she suddenly slashed at the sky with her sword. Suddenly, a huge hole was torn open in the sky. At this moment, the prison pagoda shook violently, as if expressing something. The mysterious woman blinked. "I didn't threaten you, did I?" The prison pagoda shook lightly. The mysterious woman smiled. "Then I'm going in." The prison pagoda. At this moment, the mysterious woman suddenly entered the prison pagoda. Inside the prison pagoda looked around. In the end, she came to the top of the pagoda. Looking at the sword at the top of the pagoda, her eyes flickered. In the endless night, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. At this moment, he was becoming more and more irritated. After discovering that he was irritated, Yi Xian's expression suddenly became gloomy. When did he become so irritated? Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head. All these years, he had been too impulsive. Yi Xian took a deep breath and completely relaxed. At this moment, he did not think about anything else. Just like this, time passed bit by bit. In this pitch-black night, Yi Xian could no longer feel the passage of time. At this moment, his heart was calm, and he did not think or think. Outside, the mysterious woman was lying on a chair. She held an ancient book in her left hand and was reading it with great interest. Behind her, the white-haired old man stood silently. After an unknown amount of time, the mysterious woman suddenly smiled. "This prophet is quite interesting." The white-haired old man did not say anything. The mysterious woman suddenly looked not far away. There, Yi Xian's figure suddenly appeared. Seeing this, a trace of surprise flashed in the mysterious woman's eyes. "So fast?" At this moment, Yi Xian's figure suddenly became solid. Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. He looked around, his eyes very calm. The mysterious woman stood up and walked over to Yi Xian. She smiled and said, "Do you understand?" Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." The mysterious woman asked, "What is calmness?" Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "If the heart is calm, then it will be fine even if a myriad of changes occur. When the heart is calm, the world is calm. Calmness comes from the heart, not the state." As he spoke, he looked at the mysterious woman. "The reason I'm impetuous is because I think too much, and my thoughts are complicated. I should do my best in everything. The mysterious woman shook her head. You don't really understand it. However, being able to think of all this is already good enough. As she spoke, she lightly patted Yi Xian on the shoulder. Do your best. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Please enlighten me, Sister Shui. The mysterious woman shook her head. You can only comprehend it on your own. What others tell you doesn't have that feeling, and you won't truly understand it. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few top-notch swordsmen in this world. Yi Xian smiled. Indeed. As he spoke, he hesitated to speak. The mysterious woman said, What do you want to say? Yi Xian said with a straight face, Sister Shui, my cultivation level is too low. If I want to improve my cultivation level, then I need a good sword. The mysterious woman said, You need a sword. Yi Xian nodded. The mysterious woman thought for a moment, and then she took out a storage ring and handed it to Yi Xian. For you. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he glanced at the storage ring. Soon, his expression became solemn. There were 12 swords in the storage ring, and all 12 of them were peerless swords. He was a little reluctant to devour them. The mysterious woman suddenly asked, Is it enough? Yi Xian blinked. Do you have more? The mysterious woman smiled. No. Yi Xian was speechless. You're asking me if it's enough? The mysterious woman said, Break through while I still have time. I can protect you. Yi Xian nodded. He sat down cross-legged, and then he took out a sword and stabbed it into his stomach. Boom. A powerful force swept out from his body. A trace of surprise flashed through the mysterious woman's eyes. You're devouring? Yi Xian nodded. Devouring sword. The mysterious woman said, Your cultivation method is very strange. Who taught you? Yi Xian said, The woman in the plain dress. The mysterious woman said softly, It's her. With that, she looked at Yi Xian. Break through quickly. Once you do, I'll take you to a good place. P.S. This year isn't peaceful. I hope everyone is safe. I also wish everyone a happy New Year's Eve. As for the eruption, I haven't forgotten. You know, I just got married, and it's New Year's Eve. It's very annoying to visit relatives during this period. You should understand. I promise, under normal circumstances, I won't let the eruption disappear for no reason. Chapter 1046. Yi Xian quickly asked, What good place? The mysterious woman smiled. I won't tell you yet. Yi Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman said, Hurry up and break through. Yi Xian nodded. He closed his eyes and calmly devoured the energy in his body. He had to admit that the sword the mysterious woman had given him was of the highest quality. The energy in the sword he was devouring was too pure. It was a great supplement for him. The sword the mysterious woman had given him was 2 levels lower than the executing heaven sword and soul-suppressing sword. The mysterious woman looked at Yi Xian with a faint smile. No one knew what she was thinking. Sky Demon City. Ren Pingxing and Wuxia were still at the entrance of the forbidden area. They had been waiting here for a few days. Wuxia looked at the entrance with a solemn expression. Ren Pingxing had invited him to deal with Yi Xian together, but he was still worried. Therefore, he sent Lin Mo to the boundless underground city to verify something. Looking at the time, Lin Mo should be back by now. Suddenly, the space before him trembled, and it didn't take long for a man to appear in front of him. It was Lin Mo. Ren Pingxing looked at Lin Mo but did not speak. Lin Mo walked to Wuxia's side and bowed slightly. Then he spoke in a low voice. A moment later, Wuxia slowly closed his eyes. Pathmaster, I agree to your suggestion. Ren Pingxing nodded. Very well. With the Sky Demon Clan's help, they would be more confident in dealing with the people behind Yi Xian. Wuxia looked at the entrance. Maybe he's already dead. Ren Pingxing shook his head. Definitely not. Wuxia said, Why are you so sure? Ren Pingxing said, Intuition. Wuxia was silent. For elites of their level, intuition was very accurate most of the time. For example, at the moment, his instinct was that something bad would definitely happen if he targeted Yi Xian. However, one could not act based on intuition. Ren Pingxing said, "He will definitely come out. Let's just wait." Wuxi said, "Let's talk about what happens after we kill him." Ren Pingxing said, "Arrow? Xiao Dao?" Wuxi said, "Miss Xiao Dao has made it clear that she won't act if we kill Yi Xian." Ren Pingxing said softly, "Then there is only Arrow. I don't believe that a mere Yi Xian would make her fight to the death with our two clans. Even if she wants to avenge Yi Xian, the two of us together can suppress her." Wuxi said solemnly, "There's one more." Ren Pingxing said, "The swordsman behind Yi Xian?" Wuxi nodded. After a moment of silence, Ren Pingxing said, "If we work together, no one in this world can kill us. Unless the Tendo was born. And Tendo will not help Yi Xian like this." After a moment of silence, Wuxi nodded. "That's true." At the sword sect, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. His aura was getting stronger. Not just his aura, but his swordsmanship was also much stronger than before. Swordsman cultivated the sword, but also the heart. Every improvement in his state of mind was equivalent to an improvement in his swordsmanship. But now that his swordsmanship had entered the mortal realm, it would be difficult for him to improve it again. Because if he improved again, he would be at the same level as Arrow. To reach the level of the plain-dressed woman was even more difficult. The white-haired elder suddenly walked up to the mysterious woman. "Miss, the two people outside are still here. Do you want me to kill them?" The mysterious woman said, "No need." The white-haired elder hesitated, wanting to say something. The mysterious woman said softly, "It would be too embarrassing if he couldn't kill these small fries himself." The white-haired elder asked, "Why don't you keep him by your side, master?" The mysterious woman smiled, "Why should I keep him? Father is so powerful, what can he do if I keep him by my side? Not to mention him, Father also didn't keep me by his side, right? Our family has this tradition. Let them roam, let them roam." At this point, she smiled mysteriously, "I know why Father let us roam free, because he was once roamed by Grandfather. He holds a grudge, huh?" While laughing, she seemed to feel that something was wrong and wanted to stop, but she couldn't help it, so she laughed again. The white-haired elder. At this time, the mysterious woman said, "However, he is different. I don't know what Father is doing, but since that woman is related to this little guy, then this matter is a bit abnormal." The plain-dressed woman. She knew that there was no one who didn't fear this woman. Although she was still young at that time, she could not forget what this woman had done. What fifth-dimension tribulation? This woman was even more terrifying than a fifth-dimension tribulation. The three swords on the top of the pagoda, each of their masters had a different personality. The green-robed man's sword and the plain-dressed woman's sword were similar. They seemed to be emotionless, but they had feelings. Of course, these feelings were personal. Although the green-robed man's feelings were selfish, they were not extreme. Moreover, he still had compassion for the common people of the world, so he would not destroy them for no reason. But this plain-dressed woman's feelings were different. They were extreme to the extreme. From a certain point of view, this woman's sword was even more emotionless than that of the other emotionless swordsman. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly picked up a sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Boom! A powerful wave of energy once again spread out from his body. Extremely abundant energy. Yi Xian greedily took a deep breath and then crazily absorbed this energy. At the side, the mysterious woman glanced at Yi Xian, then entered the prison pagoda. She came to the third floor. At this moment, Lil Ling was refining elixirs. Beside her was a spirit, and that spirit was helping her. Behind the two little fellows, there was also a little pet following them. This little pet was the heaven-warring beast that Yan Zong had given to Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was here, he would definitely be shocked, because this little fellow was a lot bigger than before. This heaven-warring beast was very docile as it followed Xiaoling and the spirit. These two little fellows in front of it were its parents. As the last beast of the heaven-warring beast clan, it knew very well that there were too few people in this world who could support it. It had to hug onto these people's thighs. When it saw the mysterious woman, the heaven-warring beast immediately stood in front of Xiaoling and the spirit. It glared angrily at the mysterious woman and roared. It had to be said that its bestial aura was very powerful. The mysterious woman sized up the heaven-warring beast and nodded. When it grows up, its combat strength will definitely be good. The heaven-warring beast was about to pounce when Xiaoling suddenly called out, "Piglet!" Hearing this, the heaven-warring beast immediately stopped and hurriedly pounced at Xiaoling's feet. It was very docile. Xiaoling looked at the mysterious woman and said, "You're not a bad person." The mysterious woman smiled. "How do you know that I'm not a bad person?" Xiaoling said, "I guessed it." The mysterious woman blinked. "Guessed it?" Xiaoling nodded. "Bad people are usually shifty-eyed. You're so beautiful, so you're definitely not a bad person." The mysterious woman immediately laughed. After laughing for a while, she said seriously, "I think what you said makes a lot of sense." As she spoke, she walked to Xiaoling's side and looked at the alchemy furnace. "You're refining pills?" Xiaoling nodded, and then she took out a white jade bottle and handed it to the mysterious woman. "You're big brother's sister, so you're also my sister. Beautiful sister, this is for you." Beautiful sister. The mysterious woman was very satisfied with this form of address. She glanced at the white jade bottle in her hand and shook her head slightly. "These pills of yours aren't good." "Well, it's not that you're not good, it's that the quality of these pills is too low." As she spoke, she took out an ancient book and handed it to Xiaoling. "This is for you. This was left behind by my father. However, I'm not interested in alchemy, so I'll give it to you." Xiaoling blinked, and then she took the ancient book and flipped it open. Her eyes quickly lit up. "Good stuff." Xiaoling put the ancient book away without batting an eyelid, and then she looked at the mysterious woman. "Thank you, beautiful sister." The mysterious woman smiled and said, "I have another good thing." As soon as she spoke, she took out a small box and handed it to Xiaoling. Little Ling blinked, and then she said, "For me." The mysterious woman nodded. "For you." Xiaoling hesitated for a moment, and then she said, "Big brother doesn't allow me to take things from others. But you're big brother's sister, so you're my sister. So, you're not someone else." As soon as she finished speaking, she took the box. The mysterious woman roared with laughter at the sight of this. Xiaoling was about to open the box when the mysterious woman suddenly said, "Don't open it now. Open it when you're in danger, understand?" Xiaoling blinked and nodded. "Understood. Understood." As soon as she finished speaking, she put the box away. As if she'd thought of something, she hurriedly took out a white jade bottle and handed it to the mysterious woman. The mysterious woman said, "What's this?" Xiaoling said, "Violet energy." The mysterious woman opened the white jade bottle, and there were many strands of extremely pure violet energy within it. The mysterious woman smiled when she saw the violet energy. "That little fellow?" As she spoke, she put away the violet energy and said, "The ancient book on alchemy that I gave you is good stuff. You have to learn how to refine pills in it, understand?" Xiaoling hurriedly nodded. "I understand." The mysterious woman nodded slightly, and then she glanced at the heaven-warring beast by her side. "This little fellow isn't bad. Take good care of him, and he'll be very useful in the future. Right, I'll go take a look elsewhere." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and disappeared. After the mysterious woman left, Good Spirit by Xiaoling's side suddenly said, "This human is so dangerous." Xiaoling looked at Good Spirit. "If you encounter someone you can't defeat in the future, remember to flatter them, understand?" Good Spirit blinked. "Flatter?" Xiaoling nodded and said seriously, "You have to learn how to flatter, just like Big Brother." Chapter 1047. After the mysterious woman left the 3rd floor, she went to the 5th floor. This was where Yi Ling was cultivating in seclusion. Yi Ling was cultivating in seclusion to comprehend the rebirth state. The rebirth state was not easy to comprehend. Even now, experts at the rebirth state were few and far between. The mysterious woman looked at Yi Ling with a faint smile on her face. "Interesting." After saying that, she went to the 9th floor. The person on the 9th floor suddenly said, I am a good person. The mysterious woman smiled. I want to make sure that you have no ill intentions towards him. The person on the 9th floor said, I have no ill intentions towards him. The mysterious woman looked at the entrance of the 9th floor with a smile. However, the smile was a little terrifying. The person on the 9th floor suddenly said, Heavens have mercy, I really have no ill intentions towards him. The mysterious woman shook her head. You are in danger. After saying that, a sword intent appeared on her fingertips. The person on the 9th floor quickly said, Your Excellency, I am a good person. If you don't believe me, you can ask that kid. At this moment, the mysterious woman suddenly smiled. I know you have no ill intentions. I was just joking with you. Sorry for disturbing you. After saying that, she disappeared. In the 9th floor, a sigh suddenly sounded. Is it easy for me? Outside the prison pagoda, Xian had already devoured close to 10 swords. The aura he exuded had far exceeded the karma state. However, he still did not enter the rebirth state. About 3 days later, Xian, who had been sitting on the ground with his legs crossed, suddenly opened his eyes. He stood up slowly. In an instant, a powerful aura surged out of his body like waves. Boom! The surrounding space suddenly trembled violently. Xian looked at his body. At this moment, his body contained an extremely powerful force. Rebirth state? However, there was no such thing. At this moment, the mysterious woman suddenly said, You have now encountered a half-step rebirth state. In order to truly enter the rebirth state, you must comprehend it. If you are lucky, you may enter the rebirth state tomorrow. If you are unlucky, you may never enter the rebirth state. Xian said in a deep voice, Sister Shui, how can I enter the rebirth state? The mysterious woman said, That is up to you. It is useless for me to tell you. Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman continued, Come with me to a place. With that, she turned around and left. On the way, Xian quickly asked, Sister Shui, where are we going? The mysterious woman said, You'll know once you get there. As she spoke, she suddenly turned to look at Xian. The person in your body, do you know anything about him? Xian was stunned, and then he said, The 9th floor? The mysterious woman nodded. Xian said, I don't know much about him, but this senior has helped me a lot. The mysterious woman nodded. He's not simple. You have to be careful. She did not use her profound energy to transmit her voice. Hence, she had purposely said those words for the 9th floor to hear. The person on the 9th floor suddenly said, Sir, I have a motive. But don't worry, I don't have any ill intentions towards him. The mysterious woman nodded. I know. However, it doesn't mean that there won't be any in the future. The 9th floor was silent. Xian suddenly said, I will work hard to become stronger. The mysterious woman nodded. There was a trace of admiration in her eyes. Smart. With strength, others won't choose to be your enemy. But you still need to work hard. Xian smiled. Sister Shui, can I ask you a question? The mysterious woman nodded. Go ahead. Xian said in a deep voice, Sister Shui, who are you? He was still very curious about the mysterious woman's identity. Too curious. Not only was this woman powerful, but she was also very friendly to him. Friendly to the point that it was abnormal. The mysterious woman smiled. You will know in the future. Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman suddenly said, Do you know about the 5th dimension tribulation? Xian nodded. The mysterious woman smiled. This tribulation is not simple. Before it arrives, you must become strong enough. Do you understand? Xian said in a deep voice, Sister Shui, is there a 6th dimension? The universe he was currently in was a 5th dimension universe. Was there a 6th dimension above the 5th dimension? This was what he was curious about. Xiao Dao definitely knew, but this woman didn't want to say it. The mysterious woman smiled. I don't know the answer to your question. Xian frowned. You don't know either? The mysterious woman nodded. The world is very big. It's so big that it surpasses our imagination. As she spoke, she opened her palm. There was a drop of water in her palm. The mysterious woman looked at Yi Xian. Do you know how many lives are contained in this drop of water? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. The mysterious woman smiled. A drop of water contains countless lives. Yi Xian frowned. Sister Shui, are you sure? The mysterious woman nodded. Essence. What is essence? If you understand this, you will truly become immortal. Yi Xian was silent. Essence. Up until now, the stronger he became, the more ignorant he felt. The mysterious woman suddenly said, Do you know about prophets? Yi Xian nodded. I know. Senior also knows? The mysterious woman nodded. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly looked in front of her. We're here. Yi Xian looked in front of him. There was a wasteland. In that wasteland, there were many swords stabbed into the ground. The entire wasteland was filled with powerful sword intents. There wasn't just one type of sword intents, but many types. Yi Xian asked, Sister Shui, where is this? The mysterious woman smiled. Sword mound. Sword mound? Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Just as he was about to ask, the mysterious woman said, Bow. Yi Xian was stunned. Bow. The mysterious woman suddenly said, Hurry up. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then bowed respectfully towards the sword mound. The mysterious woman walked into the sword tomb, glanced at the surroundings, and said, Your sword Dao is the Dao of that woman, so her Dao is naturally correct. However, she only gave you a direction in the sword Dao. Your understanding of the sword Dao is too little, so it'll be impossible for you to cultivate a sword Dao of your own even if you cultivate for 100 years. No path can be built behind closed doors. Our swordsman path is even more so. As she said this, she looked around. It can be said that the swordsmen here are the most powerful swordsmen in the five-dimensional universe. They once followed my father and pursued the pinnacle of the sword path. Some of them are still alive, but most of them are dead. At this point, she was silent for a moment, then said, Bow again. Hearing this, Yi Xian did not hesitate and bowed respectfully again. At this moment, he was shocked. The most powerful swordsman in the entire five-dimensional universe. This sentence was a little terrifying. At this time, the mysterious woman suddenly bowed slightly towards the sword mound. Uncles, thank you for your trouble. As soon as her voice fell, phantoms suddenly appeared in the sword mound. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression suddenly became dignified. Not long after, 36 phantoms appeared in the field. Although these phantoms were not real, the sword intent contained in each of them was extremely powerful. Not only that, these people stood there like sharp swords, as if they could even cut the sky into pieces. Powerful. One could imagine how terrifying it would be if these swordsmen were still alive. At this moment, Yi Xian finally believed the mysterious woman's words. The most powerful swordsman in the five-dimensional universe. These swordsmen in front of him were probably only second to the sword master at the top of the pagoda. In the field, the swordsmen's eyes fell on Yi Xian. When they saw Yi Xian, they were all stunned for a moment, then an inexplicable smile appeared on their faces. Yi Xian was a little puzzled by their stares. These swordsmen knew him? At this time, the mysterious woman suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Go over. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then walked over. The mysterious woman said, Learn well. After saying that, she turned around and left. At this time, a swordsman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak when a sword suddenly pierced between his eyebrows. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He was gone? At this time, a voice resounded in his ears. How was that strike just now? Yi Xian looked at the swordsman who spoke. The swordsman smiled and said, My sword Dao, sometimes false and sometimes real, sometimes false and sometimes real. Between false and real, I can change at will, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, so strong. The swordsman smiled and said, The same is true for all things. Most of the time, what you see is not necessarily true. True and real, everything depends on your heart, Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, What is Senior's sword Dao? The swordsman smiled and said, Do you want to learn? Yi Xian nodded. The swordsman smiled and said, My sword Dao is neither difficult nor difficult, it depends on your own comprehension. Yi Xian respectfully bowed, Please enlighten me, senior. The swordsman smiled and said, Come, draw your sword. Yi Xian nodded and decisively drew his sword. For the rest of the time, Yi Xian stayed in the sword catacomb. He studied almost every day without rest. Sword Dao. All this while, he knew too little about sword Dao. The woman in the plain dress gave him a direction, but she did not give him the process. In other words, the woman in the plain dress would not teach a newbie how to practice the sword. Under such circumstances, he could only rely on himself to explore his sword Dao. It was very difficult to explore on his own because he might go the wrong way. Now, with so many powerful swordsmen in front of him, he was exposed to all kinds of powerful sword Daos. For him, this was equivalent to opening a new door to sword Dao. Learn, integrate. In the following days, Yi Xian studied crazily every single day. He had never been as serious as he was at this moment. Although his strength did not improve, his knowledge of swordsmanship was increasing day by day. The Heavenly Fiend Clan. Ren Pingxing, who was still guarding the entrance of the forbidden area, suddenly said, Go in. Wuxia looked at Ren Pingxing and said, Go in. Ren Pingxing said in a deep voice, You and I can definitely kill that old swordsman if we work together. If we keep waiting here, we can only be passive. Moreover, the study room on Yi Xian is very likely to fall into the hands of others. Wuxia was silent. Ren Pingxing looked at Wuxia and asked, Are we going to risk it? Wuxia nodded after a moment of silence. Let's do it. P.S. Happy Lunar New Year again. After writing for so many years, I'm grateful for the company and support of all my readers. I'm sincerely grateful to those who have always supported me. You're my bread and butter. Thank you. When I become popular, I'll treat you to private healthcare, the illegal kind. Chapter 1048. Ren Pingxing and Wuxia entered the forbidden area. In front of the stone tablet, Wuxia said softly, So there's a sect here. Ren Pingxing looked at Wuxia. You didn't know? Wuxia nodded. I've never been here before. Ren Pingxing said, Are you joking? Wuxia said softly, This is the forbidden area of the heavenly demon tribe. The elder ancestor once issued a death order forbidding the descendants of the heavenly demon tribe from entering this place. Ren Pingxing asked, Why? Wuxia said, I don't know. Some of the ancestors of the heavenly demon tribe disobeyed the elder ancestor's order and entered this place without permission. However, none of them ever came out. Ren Pingxing looked at the stone tablet, the sword sect. Speaking of this, his expression became a little gloomy. Because Yi Xian was a swordsman. Could the sword sect be related to Yi Xian? Ren Pingxing's expression darkened at this thought. As if knowing what Ren Pingxing was thinking, Wuxia suddenly said, He shouldn't be related to the sword sect. Ren Pingxing looked at Wuxia. Why do you think so? Wuxia said softly, Because Yi Xian clearly doesn't know what this forbidden area is. Moreover, I've investigated him. It's his first time in the fifth dimension, and he's never been to the heavenly demon tribe. Therefore, he can't be related to the sword sect. Ren Pingxing nodded. No matter what, we must get that study room. Wuxia nodded. In fact, he didn't want to be enemies with Yi Xian, but that study room was crucial to the heavenly demon tribe. It was the key item that could protect the heavenly demon tribe against the fifth dimension calamity. The fifth dimension calamity was too terrifying. Without that study room, the number of heavenly demon tribe survivors could be counted on one hand. For survival. At this moment, Ren Pingxing suddenly said, Let's go. Wuxia nodded. As the two were about to enter the sword sect, a white-haired elder suddenly appeared in front of them. Ren Pingxing narrowed his eyes when he saw the white-haired elder. There was a hint of seriousness and fear in his eyes. He had fought with this white-haired old man before, so he knew very well how powerful this white-haired old man was. Wuxia glanced at the white-haired elder and said, You are... At this moment, a sword suddenly rushed out from the sword box behind the white-haired old man. A sword light instantly killed Wuxia. The speed of the sword caused Wuxia and Wuxi's expressions to instantly change. Wuxia raised his arm to block. Boom! Wuxia was instantly sent flying several hundred feet away. Practically at the same time, Ren Pingxing was also sent flying several hundred feet away by a sword light. At this moment, both Wuxia and Lin Fan's faces turned serious. This white-haired old man's strength was even stronger than the two of them imagined. Ren Pingxing looked at the white-haired elder and said, "Sir, the two of us have no intention of becoming enemies with you." The white-haired old man glanced at Ren Pingxing and his companion. "Are you here for him?" Ren Pingxing nodded. "That's right. Your Excellency, the two of us are only looking for that Yixian." "How dare you!" The white-haired old man suddenly shouted angrily. In the next moment, a sword light appeared in front of Ren Pingxing without any warning. Ren Pingxing's pupils constricted. A spear suddenly appeared in his hand, and he thrust it forward with all his might. Boom! Ren Pingxing was sent flying again. Not only that, but the sword light also shattered his spear. At this moment, a wave of black light suddenly engulfed the sword light. Boom! An explosion suddenly sounded from within the black light. In the distance, the white-haired old man turned to look at Wuxia. Wuxia said in a low voice, "Your Excellency, do you know that Yixian?" The white-haired old man looked at Wuxia. "How dare you!" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly put his palms together. In an instant, an illusory sword instantly appeared above his head. At the instant that sword appeared, the expressions of the white-haired old man and Wuxia had instantly become solemn. The white-haired old man suddenly shouted angrily, "Slash!" As soon as he finished speaking, the sword above his head suddenly shot through the air. The space in the area was torn apart inch by inch. This sword was capable of destroying heaven and earth. Meanwhile, Ren Pingxing suddenly said, "Let's join forces." As soon as he finished speaking, he and Wuxia charged forward. Rumble! Suddenly, an explosion resounded like a thunderclap through the heavens and the earth. In midair, Ren Pingxing and Wuxia retreated repeatedly, and they moved 3 kilometers back. Both of them had even more solemn expressions on their faces when they stopped moving. The white-haired old man was about to attack again when a voice suddenly resounded from afar, "Forget it." The white-haired old man hesitated for a moment when he heard this voice, and then he moved aside. Wuxia and Ren Pingxing looked in the direction of the sword sect. There was a woman standing in the air above the sword sect's hall, and she had a smile on her face. Wuxia spoke in a low voice, "May I know who you are?" The woman smiled, "Both of you want to kill Yixian?" Wuxia gazed at her, "You intend to protect him?" The woman shook her head, No. We won't protect him. He has nothing to do with us." Wuxia and Ren Pingxing were stunned when they heard this. Meanwhile, the woman continued, "I'm asking him to do something for me right now, and he'll leave once he's done. At that time, both of you can go kill him." Ren Pingxing and Wuxia glanced at each other, and there was a trace of bewilderment in their eyes. The white-haired old man glanced at his young miss and didn't dare speak. The woman suddenly smiled and said, "It's true. We have nothing to do with him. Both of you can leave. He'll leave immediately once he's done with me. At that time, both of you can go kill him." Wuxia hesitated for a moment and said, "Why don't you leave him to us right now?" The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Believe it or not, I'll kill both of you." Wuxia and Ren Pingxing's expressions instantly became unsightly when they heard this. Why does this woman suddenly change her attitude? Ren Pingxing intended to say something else when Wuxia spoke abruptly, "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't give Ren Pingxing a chance to speak before he turned around and vanished on the spot. Ren Pingxing immediately chose to leave when he saw Wuxia leave. Without Wuxia, he couldn't even defeat the white-haired old man, let alone the mysterious woman who had just appeared. After the two of them left, the white-haired old man looked at the mysterious woman. "Young miss," the mysterious woman smiled and said, "I know what you want to say, but I have to tell you that he has to solve his own problem." The white-haired old man said, "What if he can't solve it?" The mysterious woman smiled slightly and turned around to leave. Below, A trace of a smile appeared on the white-haired old man's face. At the sword catacomb, Yixian was still communicating with the swordsman. At first, he just listened and asked questions when he didn't understand. It didn't take long before he began to communicate with the swordsman. After all, he was an ordinary sword practitioner, and his attainment in sword principle was not low. During this period, Yixian's sword principle knowledge had grown at a terrifying rate. Not only that, but he had also come into contact with countless sword principles and expanded his knowledge. During this period, Yixian had learned to the point where he forgot himself. At the entrance to the forbidden area of Heavenly Demon City, Ren Pingxing stared at Wuxi. "Why should we retreat?" Wuxi said softly, "Can you defeat that mysterious woman?" Ren Pingxing was silent. Wuxi said again, "That woman's strength is unfathomable." Ren Pingxing said gloomily, "Are we just going to give up?" Wuxi said, "Didn't she say that she has nothing to do with Yixian?" Ren Pingxing was silent. Wuxi said, "I'm afraid that woman is also using Yixian. Anyway, we just need to wait for Yixian to come out. Of course, if the sect master can find a strong expert to help us, we can fight our way in. Without the help of a strong expert, I'm afraid that the two of us are no match for her." Ren Pingxing said in a low voice, "We can't trust that woman." Wuxi looked at Ren Pingxing. "What do you want to do?" Ren Pingxing slowly closed his eyes. "No matter how strong that woman is, she can't be stronger than a sovereign. We just need to find 2 more sovereigns, and the 4 of us will be able to suppress the 2 from the sword sect." Wuxi shook his head. "It won't be easy." Ren Pingxing suddenly opened his eyes. "I'll find them." Hearing this, Wuxi suddenly looked up at Ren Pingxing. Ren Pingxing said in a low voice, "One more thing. Why don't we let Yixian come out himself?" Wuxi frowned. "Let him come out himself?" At this point he seemed to have thought of something and paused for a moment. "You mean, against the world-wide academy?" Ren Pingxing said, "I'll find someone to help him. If the mysterious woman and the old man really don't help him, then it's fine. If they help him, then we'll fight them." With that he disappeared. In the field, Wuxi's face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. In the sword catacomb, the mysterious woman walked into the sword catacomb. She looked at Yixian, who was talking to the swordsman in the distance, with a faint smile on her face. Yixian had been studying here for several days. During these days, Yixian did not sleep or rest. Just like that, another few days passed. On this day, Yixian suddenly sat down with his legs crossed. After a while, his whole body was in meditation. The swordsmen did not disappear. They were all there watching Yixian. The mysterious woman did not leave either. She looked at Yixian in the distance, thinking about something. Time passed slowly. About 3 days later, Yixian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes, there was a flash of sword light. Seeing this, the mysterious woman's lips curled up slightly. At this moment, Yixian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, stood up. Boom! A powerful sword intent suddenly swept out from his body, and the sky was like a tornado that shook the heavens and the earth. Yixian greedily took a deep breath. He slowly clenched his hands, and an illusory sword suddenly condensed above his head. The sword essence soared into the sky. At this moment, the mysterious woman walked to Yixian's side. She glanced at Yixian and asked, "How do you feel?" Yixian took another deep breath and said, "I feel very good." The mysterious woman smiled. "You still need to go through a thorough absorption process. However, this process can't be rushed. It has to be done slowly." Yixian nodded. He was about to speak when the space in front of him suddenly trembled. A moment later, Yixian frowned deeply. The mysterious woman asked, "What's wrong?" Yixian said in a low voice, "The Tao Protectors and Heavenly Demon City are going to target my friends." As he spoke, he looked at the mysterious woman. "Sister Shui, I'm going back." The mysterious woman blinked and smiled mischievously. "Do you need help?" Yixian hurriedly said, "Yes. I really need it." Chapter 1049. The mysterious woman smiled when she heard Yi Xian. I'm just joking. Yi Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman smiled. You're leaving. I'm leaving as well. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Sister Shui is leaving? The mysterious woman glanced at the surroundings and nodded. It's time to leave as well. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Where are you going, Sister Shui? The mysterious woman smiled. It's time to go back. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Back to where? The mysterious woman smiled. Why do you have so many questions? Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. I'm just curious. The mysterious woman grinned. Curiosity kills you most of the time. Yi Xian said, Sister Shui, will we meet again in the future? The mysterious woman smiled. Yes, definitely. Yi Xian smiled. Why? The mysterious woman smiled. See, you're asking again. Yi Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman glanced at Yi Xian and spoke softly. Take good care of yourself. Cultivate well. Fight by our side in the future. Yi Xian nodded. A trace of reluctance suddenly arose in his heart. For some reason, even though he hadn't known the mysterious woman for long, he felt that she was very close, and he felt that she wouldn't harm him. It was a very strange feeling. At this moment, the mysterious woman suddenly glanced at the swordsman behind Yi Xian and spoke softly. I'll give you a gift. Yi Xian asked. A mysterious gift? The mysterious woman's lips curled up slightly, and her smile was slightly mischievous. Endless underground city, within the pawnshop. Xiao Dao was snoring behind the counter. After some time, Xiao Dao suddenly raised her head, and her brows furrowed slightly. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked into the pawnshop. It was the Heavenly Fiend clan leader, Wuxia. Wuxia glanced at Xiao Dao and spoke softly. Miss Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao smiled and asked, What's up? Wuxia asked in a deep voice, Miss Xiao Dao, do you know Yi Xian's true background? Xiao Dao nodded. I know. Wuxia bowed slightly and said, Please enlighten me, Miss Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao smiled. This question is very expensive. Wuxia hesitated for a moment and said, What does Miss Xiao Dao need? Xiao Dao shook his head. It's not about what I need, but what you have. Wuxia pulled out a storage ring and placed it on the counter. Xiao Dao glanced at it before shaking his head. After a moment of silence, Wuxia took out another storage ring and placed it on the counter. However, Xiao Dao still shook his head. Wuxia frowned. So expensive? Xiao Dao smiled and said, It's all right. Wuxia said in a deep voice, Miss Xiao Dao, can you do me a favor? Xiao Dao looked at Wuxia. Your favor is worthless. It was very direct. Wuxia's expression instantly became unsightly. That's not giving me any face at all. Xiao Dao smiled. Patriarch Wuxia, if there's nothing else, then please leave. Wuxia sighed softly. Miss Xiao Dao, according to what I know, you have a close relationship with Yi Xian. This time, Xiao Dao suddenly interrupted Wuxia. I know the objective of you and the Dao Master. You've come here to kill Yi Xian. I can tell you clearly that even though I have a good relationship with Yi Xian, I won't go against my principles and help him. Wuxia spoke in a low voice. Who exactly is that woman behind him? Xiao Dao shook his head and smiled. This question is even more expensive than the previous one. Are you sure you want to ask that? Wuxia shook his head slightly. Miss Xiao Dao, I'm afraid the Sky Devil tribe doesn't have what you need. Xiao Dao chuckled. All right, I'll give you something for free. Leave now and go back to your Sky Devil city to stay. Wuxia frowned slightly. Why? Xiao Dao shook his head and sighed. You see, I told you to leave, but you won't be satisfied. Since you're not satisfied, why ask me? Wuxia was silent. Xiao Dao did not speak either. She picked up an ancient book and began to read. In the pawnshop, after a moment of silence, Wuxia said, Sorry to disturb you. With that, he turned and disappeared. In the pawnshop, Xiao Dao shook his head. No one knew what he was thinking. At the Worldwide Academy, under the leadership of the headmaster and Zhang Wenxiu, the Worldwide Academy had completely recovered. Not only that, under the headmaster's call, Many tutors who had left the academy returned to the academy. The worldwide academy could be said to be thriving. In a courtyard, the headmaster and Zhang Wenxiu sat opposite each other. The headmaster picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip. Then he said, "Recently, I have a feeling that something bad is going to happen." Zhang Wenxiu looked at the headmaster. "Is it because of him?" The female headmaster nodded. "Ever since we were with him, the fate of the academy and our fates have become inseparable from him." Zhang Wenxiu was silent. The female headmaster smiled. "During this period, I have investigated many things." Zhang Wenxiu looked at the female headmaster. The female headmaster said, "This is a chaotic era. Super powerhouses and super forces from different eras are gathered in this era. This is definitely not a good thing." Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, "We will deal with it when it comes." The female headmaster smiled. "You are optimistic." Zhang Wenxiu was just about to speak. Right at this moment, she suddenly raised her head to look towards the sky, and a shapeless pressure had suddenly swept down from the sky above the Myriad Dimension Academy. The female headmaster said softly, "Look at my intuition." Zhang Wenxiu dodged with her right foot and her whole body turned into a spear radiance that shot up into the sky. Now, Zhang Wenxiu's strength surpassed that of the female headmaster. This was because she had the spear that the old blacksmith had forged for her and the power of her own bloodline. In the sky, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly stopped. This was because at this moment, the force was many times stronger than before. A cold light flashed in Zhang Wenxiu's eyes and the long spear in her hand stabbed forward. A spear radiance pierced the sky. Boom! The invisible force was directly pierced by the spear. At this moment, a shadow suddenly rushed towards Zhang Wenxiu. Boom! Zhang Wenxiu suddenly fell from the sky. When she landed on the ground, the entire ground exploded and became a pitch-black abyss. Zhang Wenxiu looked up and saw a middle-aged man standing in the sky. This man was the Daoist master of Tendo City, Ren Pingxing. Ren Pingxing looked at Zhang Wenxiu. "You're quite interesting." Zhang Wenxiu looked at Ren Pingxing. "Who are you?" Ren Pingxing said, "Taoist master." Zhang Wenxiu frowned. "Protector?" Ren Pingxing nodded. "Yes." Zhang Wenxiu smiled. "Your real target is Yi Xian, right?" Ren Pingxing said, "Yes." Zhang Wenxiu smiled. "Why don't you go and find him directly?" Ren Pingxing said softly, "He's not coming out." Zhang Wenxiu nodded slightly. "I understand." Clearly, the other party wanted to use the worldwide academy to force Yi Xian to show himself. But where did this guy go? In the sky, Ren Pingxing looked down at the worldwide academy with a complicated look in his eyes. This was the academy founded by the prophet. Ren Pingxing had some respect for the prophet. He had gone to the Tendo Galaxy many years ago. Although he had almost destroyed the Tendo Galaxy, Ren Pingxing could not bring himself to hate the prophet. The prophet was a man worthy of respect. At this moment, Wuxia suddenly appeared. Wuxia looked down and said, "Is Yi Xian not going to show himself yet?" Ren Pingxing said, "He will show himself." Then, he opened his right palm and pressed down lightly. Boom! An invisible force suddenly swept down from the sky. Zhang Wenxiu's face darkened at the sight of this force. If this force were to fall, the entire worldwide academy would be razed to the ground. It was too powerful. A ferocious look flashed in Zhang Wenxiu's eyes. She held the spear in her right hand and shot up into the sky. A spear light exploded from the tip of the spear. Kaboom! The entire sky trembled violently. Ren Pingxing looked at the spear in Zhang Wenxiu's hand and said softly, "That's a good spear. Unfortunately, it's not enough." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly smashed his fist down. Boom! An enormous fist swept down from the sky. Zhang Wenxiu's eyes narrowed slightly, and then she tossed the spear up into the sky. The spear tore through the air and pierced the sky. It didn't take long for the spear to strike the fist. Kaboom! The spear shook violently, and then it cracked apart and fell from the sky. However, the fist had cracked open into a spider web as well. Zhang Wenxiu reached out with her right hand and grabbed the falling spear. However, Zhang Wenxiu's expression changed drastically as soon as she did. Boom! The space around Zhang Wenxiu was instantly obliterated. At the same time, a wisp of blood flowed out of her mouth. She was heavily injured. Zhang Wenxiu looked up at Ren Pingxing in the sky. Her expression was extremely solemn. The person in front of her was not someone she could defeat. In the sky, Ren Pingxing looked down at Zhang Wenxiu. He was about to strike again when a voice suddenly came from the side. "You're looking for me?" Ren Pingxing turned to look. Not far away, a man was walking slowly toward him. It was Yi Xian. Zhang Wenxiu looked at the approaching Yi Xian. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and felt relieved. This guy had finally appeared. Yi Xian walked up to Zhang Wenxiu and wiped the blood from the corner of Zhang Wenxiu's mouth. Then, he took out a drop of the super spring of life and fed it to Zhang Wenxiu. "I'll wipe out his entire family for hurting my woman. Yi Xian will wipe out his entire family." Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. At this time, Ren Pingxing looked at Yi Xian. "You've changed." Yi Xian turned to look at Ren Pingxing and smiled. "Have I become more handsome?" Ren Pingxing said calmly, "Yi Xian, I'll give you one last chance. I can spare your life, but you must hand over Xiao Ta and the Universal Library. Hand them over, and the two of us will immediately return to Tendo Galaxy." Yi Xian was silent. Ren Pingxing said again, "This is your last chance. Don't make a mistake." Yi Xian smiled. "What if I don't agree?" Ren Pingxing looked at Yi Xian. "Then, you can call the undefeatable arrow behind you now." Then he smiled. "Or, the woman in the plain dress behind you. P.S. Why are there so few monthly votes?" Chapter 1050. Hearing Ren Pingxing's words, Zhang Wenxiu, who was standing next to Yi Xian, suddenly became solemn. Why would Ren Pingxing say that? It was simple. They had the confidence. They had come to find Yi Xian this time, clearly prepared for anything. Thinking of this, Zhang Wenxiu turned to look at Yi Xian with a hint of worry in her eyes. Yi Xian did not pay attention to Ren Pingxing. Instead, he turned around and said with a smile, "Miss Daoist." As soon as he spoke, a woman appeared in the space where he was looking. The person who came was little Daoist. Seeing Xiao Dao, Ren Pingxing and Wuxi's expressions darkened. If Xiao Dao was helping Yi Xian, then things would be very, very troublesome. As if knowing what Ren Pingxing and Wuxi were thinking, Xiao Dao suddenly smiled. "Don't think too much, I'm here purely to watch the show, that's all. You fight your battles, I'll watch mine." Ren Pingxing glanced at Xiao Dao. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Wuxi and smiled. "Senior Wuxi, Yi Xian, will remember your help that day. If you leave now, Yi Xian, will still be good friends with the Heavenly Fiend clan." Wuxi looked at Yi Xian. "Friend Yi, if you're willing to hand over the World Prison Pagoda and the study, the Heavenly Fiend clan will not be your enemy." Yi Xian smiled. He opened his palm and the universal study appeared in his hand. He looked at Ren Pingxing and Wuxi in the sky. "The study is right here, come and get it." Ren Pingxing narrowed his eyes at Yi Xian's words. Fearless. At this moment, Ren Pingxing and Wuxi were even more cautious. At this moment, Ren Pingxing suddenly said, "Let's attack together." As soon as he spoke, he and Wuxi disappeared on the spot. The two of them joined forces. Obviously, the two of them wanted to kill Yi Xian with a single strike. At this moment, a white-haired elder suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Two sword beams suddenly soared into the sky from the sword box behind the white-haired elder. Buzz. Two sword cries shook the world. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, Ren Pingxing and Wuxi retreated thousands of feet. Seeing this white-haired elder, Wuxi and Ren Pingxing, who had stopped, suddenly looked terrible. This person was none other than the old swordsman from the mysterious forbidden area. In the distance, Xiao Dao looked at the white-haired old man. No one knew what he was thinking. The white-haired old man looked at Ren Pingxing and Wuxi in the sky and his eyes were filled with disdain. "How dare you ants dream of killing my young master?" Young master? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Yi Xian was also stunned. He looked at the white-haired old man. Old Gu. Young master? Old Gu glanced at Yi Xian, and then he hesitated for a moment before he said, "You're the younger brother of the young miss, so you should be the young master." Yi Xian blinked. Is that even possible? Old Gu paid no attention to Yi Xian. He raised his head to look at Rinpingxing and Wuxi while a wisp of disdain arose on the corners of his mouth. How dare ants like you think of killing my young master? What a delusion! As soon as he finished speaking, he swiftly dodged with his right leg. Bang! In front of everyone's eyes, a sword light soared into the sky. Rinpingxing and Wuxi's expressions were extremely solemn. The strength of this old swordsman was extraordinarily formidable. Moreover, he called Yi Xian young master? A bad feeling arose in Wuxi's heart. However, he had no way out now. He didn't have the time to think because the ray of light had already slashed down towards him. Meanwhile, Rinpingxing spoke abruptly. Keep him busy! As soon as he finished speaking, Rinpingxing charged towards Yi Xian. Wuxi's expression changed. Keep him busy? Would he be able to keep him busy? Not daring to be careless, Wuxi roared angrily and put his palms together. A gigantic heavenly demon statue suddenly appeared behind him. The next moment, the heavenly demon statue slammed its palm against the ray of light. Bang! A deafening explosion suddenly sounded in the sky. At this moment, Rinpingxing had already arrived above Yi Xian's head. Yi Xian was about to strike when the ray of light instantly appeared in front of Rinpingxing. Bang! Rinpingxing returned to his original position. In the sky, a pitch-black crack that was hundreds of feet long had appeared out of nowhere. It had been created by a sword. Rinpingxing looked down at Old Gu with an extremely solemn expression. This old man's strength was too terrifying. Rinpingxing and Wuxi's expressions were extremely ugly. This old swordsman could not be held back by one person. Rinpingxing suddenly turned to look up into the sky. Master! An old man suddenly appeared in the sky. Xiao Dao gazed at the old man and frowned slightly. You're the previous Dao Lord, Mo Shuzi. Mo Shuzi gazed at Xiao Dao. Miss Xiao Dao, you're still as elegant as ever since we last met. Xiao Dao smiled. Why didn't you continue your closed-door cultivation? Why have you come out to join in the fun? Mo Shuzi shook his head while a trace of confusion could be seen in his eyes. It's impossible for me to attain the legendary self-release realm in my lifetime. As he spoke, he gazed down at the white-haired old man. I'll keep him busy. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Old Gu's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he opened his right hand, one with the world. As soon as he finished speaking, an illusory sword suddenly appeared above him, and then he suddenly became one with the sword. Bang! A sword howl shook the heavens and the earth. Bang! In the sky, Missouri Shuzi was suddenly blasted back into the void. The expressions of Rinpingxing and the others became unsightly once more when they witnessed this scene. Mo Shuzi gazed down at Old Gu. What a formidable swordsman! As he spoke, he gazed at Wuxi. Join forces with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he and Wuxi vanished on the spot. Old Gu frowned slightly, and then he turned around to look at Yi Xian. Young master, watch out. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly took off the sword chest on his back, and then he slapped his palm against it. Bang! In an instant, countless rays of light surged out explosively from within the sword chest, and then the entire sky was instantly covered in countless rays of light. Rumble! Rumble! Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the sky while Rinpingxing had arrived above Yi Xian, and then he suddenly smashed his fist down. However, Yi Xian leaped up and raised his sword. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then Yi Xian was pushed over 1 kilometer back while Rinpingxing was pushed over 100 m back as well. After he stopped, Rinpingxing was stunned for a moment, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. How could this be possible? Your sword? At that moment, he realized that Yi Xian was much, much stronger than before. Previously, Yi Xian could not fight back against him, but now, the current Yi Xian could fight against him. And how young was Yi Xian? He was too much of a monster. Just as Rinpingxing was about to attack, Yi Xian suddenly took out a shield. Summer shield. Yi Xian looked at Rinpingxing. Come on. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged at Ren Pingxing. Ren Pingxing narrowed his eyes and swung his palm down. In the distance, Yi Xian raised the shield in his left hand and blocked it. Bang! Yi Xian and his shield retreated hundreds of meters in an instant. However, he managed to withstand Ren Pingxing's strength. After all, he not only had the Sumeru shield, but he also had the torch dragon armor. Ren Pingxing was about to attack again when he suddenly turned to look at the sky. There, the ancient figure had firmly suppressed Wuxia and Wuxia. Seeing this, Ren Pingxing's expression darkened. He knew that Wuxia and Wuxia would not be able to hold out for long. At this thought, Ren Pingxing looked at Yi Xian and said fiercely, "Then let us all perish together." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly blasted a palm into the sky. Bang! A huge pitch-black hole suddenly appeared in the sky, and within that black hole was a teleportation portal. Soon, powerful auras suddenly emerged from the black hole. Seeing this, Yi Xian frowned. The other party was going to teleport all the cultivators from the Tendo galaxy here. They were going to gang up on him. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. He opened his palm and a teleportation talisman appeared in his hand. He immediately crushed the talisman. Bang! Behind Yi Xian, a huge teleportation portal suddenly appeared. Soon, a powerful aura appeared and an elder walked out. This person was the sect leader of the Tai sect, Yuan Yi. Seeing Yi Xian, Yuan Yi nodded slightly. "Young friend Yi," Yi Xian said, "Senior Yuan Yi, I need the Tai sect's help." Yuan Yi glanced at Ren Pingxing in the sky and frowned. "Sect leader." Ren Pingxing also looked at Yuan Yi. "Tai sect." Yuan Yi was silent. Ren Pingxing said in a low voice, "Sect leader Yuan Yi, this matter has nothing to do with you. Please do not interfere." Yuan Yi smiled. "You must be joking." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm and a token arrow suddenly disappeared. In an instant, a powerful aura emerged from the teleportation portal behind Yi Xian. Seeing this, Ren Pingxing narrowed his eyes. "Is it worth it for the Tai sect to do this for Yi Xian?" Yuan Yi shook his head. "One must keep his word." As soon as he finished speaking, countless cultivators from the Tai sect appeared behind him. It could be said that the Tai sect had sent out all of their cultivators. At this time, the cultivators from the Tendo galaxy also appeared. In terms of lineup and numbers, the Tai sect was inferior to the Tendo galaxy. In the sky, Ren Pingxing looked at Yuan Yi. "Sect leader Yuan Yi, I'll give you one last chance. Leave with the Tai sect now and I'll pretend that nothing happened." Yuan Yi was silent. At this time, just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Yuan Yi smiled and said, "If I leave now, I really won't be able to keep my face." Ren Pingxing nodded. "If that's the case, then the Tai sect will be buried with Yi Xian." As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at Yi Xian below. In the sky, countless cultivators from the Tendo galaxy swooped down. Yuan Yi's expression turned ferocious. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly dodged with his right foot and shot up into the sky. Behind him were countless cultivators from the Tai sect. Yi Xian turned to look at Gu Gu, who was not far away. At this time, Gu Lai was firmly suppressing Wuxia and Wuxia, but it was still difficult for Gu Gu to kill these two people. The Tai sect was no match for the Tendo galaxy. Yi Xian looked up at the sky. At this time, there were already cultivators from the Tai sect who had fallen. In the sky, Ren Pingxing suddenly swooped down. His target was Yi Xian, and beside him were two super cultivators from the city of Tendo. Obviously, he wanted to kill Yi Xian as soon as possible. At this time, the distant skies suddenly split open, and then, a group of white-robed cultivators with swords rushed out. Great Wilderness Kingdom. Chapter 1051. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the fighters from the Kingdom of Great Wilderness. Arrow was here? But he didn't see Arrow. With the appearance of the 100 people, the situation was reversed. These 100 white-robed fighters were too powerful. Each of them could fight 10 people at once. Ren Pingxing's expression darkened when he saw the 100 people. What he was worried about had happened. With the intervention of the Kingdom of Great Wilderness, It meant that arrow was openly on Yi Xian's side. There was no way out. Ren Pingsheng turned to look at Wuxia, who was not far away. Call your people over. In the distance, Wuxia, who was fighting with Elder Gu, suddenly stopped. He looked to the other side, and after a moment of silence, he waved his right hand. The space behind him split open, and soon, countless fighters from the Heavenly Fiend clan flew out. In an instant, the entire worldwide academy was filled with demons. In the sky, Ren Pingsheng looked down at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to hand it over or not? If not, countless people will die because of you today. Below, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Boom! All of a sudden, countless sword essences surged out of Yi Xian's body. Gradually, the space around Yi Xian became turbulent like boiling water. In the sky, Ren Pingsheng's eyes narrowed, and his expression gradually turned ferocious. Since you want to die, I'll grant you your wish. With that, his body gradually became illusory, and a blood-red flame suddenly appeared around him. With the appearance of this flame, the temperature of the entire world suddenly rose, and it became hotter and hotter, as if it was about to burn the world. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Hellfire, the hellfire refined by Tendo to maintain the order of time. This fire is the nemesis of souls, don't be careless. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Yi in the distance. It was Yuan Yi who had just spoken. Yi Xian nodded slightly, his right hand quietly holding the executing heaven sword. In the sky, Ren Pingsheng suddenly roared, Die! As soon as he finished speaking, the flames around him suddenly swept down from the sky. Pist, 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 pist. Wherever the flame passed, the space was annihilated. The experts in the surroundings fled in all directions to avoid the flames because they were too strong. The flame itself was extremely powerful, and with a sovereign realm expert controlling it, its might could be said to be capable of destroying the heavens and earth. Clearly, Ren Pingsheng wanted to kill Yi Xian. Down below, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu suddenly appeared next to him. Yi Xian turned his head to look at Zhang Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu said calmly, Is there a problem? Yi Xian smiled. Do you want to die with me? Zhang Wenxiu looked at Yi Xian. Can you block it? The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up. He dodged with his right foot and shot into the sky. When he was in the sky, the smile in Yi Xian's eyes widened. His Sumeru shield suddenly disappeared. Not only did the Sumeru shield disappear, but the torch dragon armor also disappeared. Only his physical body was left. Ren Pingsheng frowned when he saw this. What was Yi Xian trying to do? At this moment, a powerful aura of death suddenly appeared around Yi Xian. The moment this aura of death appeared, the flame immediately engulfed Yi Xian. Everyone in the surroundings was shocked when they witnessed this scene, but it wasn't long before they were stunned once more. Because Yi Xian was completely unscathed within the flame. Not only was he completely unscathed, but he was also smiling. Ren Pingsheng's pupils shrank when he saw this. How is this possible? Within the flame, Yi Xian had a faint smile on his face. Undying form. In the face of Ren Pingsheng's strongest attack, Yi Xian did not dare to be careless. He immediately activated his undying form. In fact, he had been very worried in the beginning because he was not sure if his undying form could block the karmic fire. After all, the karmic fire was too powerful. Fortunately, his undying form was very strong. He did not feel anything when the karmic fire burned him. Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. Boom! The karmic fire was repelled by his sword. At the same time, Yi Xian rushed to Ren Pingsheng and slashed with his sword. Ren Pingsheng's mouth curled up ferociously. Let's see how much of a monster you are. With that, he charged forward at an extremely fast speed. Before Yi Xian's sword could reach his head, his fist had already landed on Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian retreated thousands of meters in an instant, but he was completely unharmed. Not only that, but a black aura appeared on Ren Pingsheng's right fist. It was the aura of death. And the aura of death was madly devouring his hand. Ren Pingsheng frowned slightly. Is Yi Xian all right? In the distance, Yi Xian was also a little stunned. Strictly speaking, this was the first time he had used his undying form. At first, he had some doubts about his undying form, but now, he had no doubts at all. He was invincible for a short period of time. Of course, at this moment, he also realized that there were strong and weak sovereigns. Arrow's strength was definitely far superior to Renpingxing's, because his intuition told him that his undying form was ineffective against Arrow. Without hesitation, Yixian charged at Renpingxing. At this moment, he was invincible. Seeing Yixian charging at him, Renpingxing narrowed his eyes. He opened his palm, and the karmic fire gathered in his palm. In the next moment he disappeared, and at the same time, a flame instantly engulfed Yixian. Rumble! A powerful burning force directly burned the space around Yixian into nothingness. However, Yixian was still unharmed. It was as if the flame did not burn him at all. Seeing this, Renpingxing's expression became even more unsightly. He knew that Yixian's physical body was extremely strong and had reached the immortal realm. However, at this moment, Yixian's physical body was not just strong, it was invincible. Even the karmic fire could not hurt him? What kind of physical body was this? Renpingxing's heart was full of doubts. At this moment, Yixian charged at him again. This time, Yixian used the wings of the demon, and his speed could be said to have reached his limit. Renpingxing did not dodge. He punched at Yixian's abdomen. His speed was faster than Yixian's, and he punched Yixian's head first. Yixian was sent flying again, but the moment he was sent flying, Renpingxing's sword slashed at Renpingxing's head. A faint sound of slicing resounded. A faint sword mark appeared on Renpingxing's head. His physical body was not as strong as Yixian's. Moreover, Yixian's sword was the strengthened version of the Executing Heaven sword. However, Yixian was usually fine after taking a punch from him head-on. Renpingxing wiped off the blood on his forehead, and then he looked at Yixian. He was about to attack again when the howl of a sword resounded from afar. He turned around and saw Emo Shuzi being pushed back by Gugu's attack. At this moment, Emo Shuzi's body was covered in sword marks. Emo Shuzi was still fine, but Wuxia was in a worse state. His heavenly demon clone had been slashed into pieces, and even his right arm had been severed. At this moment, Emo Shuzi and Wuxia were unable to suppress Gugu. Meanwhile, Gugu turned around to look at Renpingxing with an icy cold gaze. A sword suddenly shot into the sky from the sword chest on his back. A ray of sword light instantly slashed towards Renpingxing. Renpingxing's expression changed drastically, and he waved his right hand, causing flames to drown the ray of sword light. Bang! The ray of sword light was incinerated into nothingness by the karmic fire. Just as Gugu was about to attack again, Renpingxing suddenly looked up. "What are you waiting for?" After a moment of silence, a crack suddenly appeared in the sky. In the next moment, an eerie aura emanated from it, and soon, an afterimage had arrived above Gugu's head. Gugu drew his sword and slashed. Buzz! The howl of the sword shook the heavens and earth. Rumble! With a loud explosion, Gugu and the afterimage retreated rapidly. When the afterimage stopped, everyone saw its true appearance. It was a man. His entire body was illusory, and a strange black aura floated around him. Yixian looked at the man and frowned. Who was this? Yixian seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Xiao Dao not far away. Xiao Dao smiled and said, "His name is Saint Tianhua, an expert from the Tendo Galaxy. He is from the same generation as Lin Lang, and he was one of the founders of the Dao Protectors." There were 3 people who founded the Dao Protectors back then. No, strictly speaking, the other 2 were Lin Lang's followers. Saint Tianhua glanced at Xiao Dao, and there was murderous intent in the depths of his eyes, but he dared not show it. There was no one who did not fear Xiao Dao. Yixian suddenly smiled and said, "If I'm not wrong, the Heavenly Fiend clan also has an old monster like him, right?" Xiao Dao smiled and said, "You guessed right." At this moment, Renpingxing suddenly looked at Wuxia and said angrily, "Wuxia, are you still hiding your strength? If Yixian doesn't die, we'll all be doomed." Wuxia glanced at Yixian and his expression became extremely ugly. He never thought that the Heavenly Fiend clan and the Dao protectors would not be able to kill Yi Xian. Wuxia did not think too much about it and suddenly looked up at the sky. He slowly closed his eyes and said, "Ancestor, please." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly crushed a talisman in his right hand. Boom! The space above Wuxia's head suddenly split open, and soon, a powerful aura swept down from the sky. Then, a white-haired old man dressed in black robes slowly walked out. The moment the black-robed old man walked out, the world became illusory. Yi Xian's expression became solemn and he turned to look at Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao smiled and said, "Demon Emperor Daoist, the second-generation ancestor of the Heavenly Fiend clan. You're very powerful." Demon Emperor Daoist glanced at Xiao Dao and said, "Lady Xiao Dao is still as graceful as ever." Xiao Dao smiled and said, "I won't get involved in your affairs. I'm just here to watch the show." After a moment of silence, Demon Emperor Daoist nodded slightly and dared not say anything else. When he was still a young man, he already knew that Xiao Dao was unfathomable, and he was still the same now. Demon Emperor Daoist collected his thoughts and turned to look at Saint Tianhua not far away. "I never thought that we'd join forces." Saint Tianhua said calmly, "Let's cut the nonsense. Are you going to do it, or should I?" Demon Emperor Daoist looked at Yi Xian below and said softly, "This person is not to be underestimated. Let's not be careless. Let's attack together and not give him any chance." Saint Tianhua thought about it and nodded. "All right." As soon as he finished, all the experts in the sky charged down. Below, Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. They're going to play with their lives. At that moment, Elder Gu suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He looked at the experts in the sky and sneered, "Do you think my sword sect has no one?" As soon as he finished, he opened his palm and a small token suddenly shot into the sky. The next moment, the token disappeared into the space. In an unknown star field, several sword lights suddenly cut through the space, shuttling through the endless star field. Not far away, Xiao Dao said softly, "The number 1 force of the 5th dimension is going to appear in such a way? P.S. This year is not peaceful. Everyone, be careful and don't run around. There are many." Chapter 1052. Elder Gu was calling for reinforcements. It had to be said that Yi Xian was a little confused because he did not expect Elder Gu to call for reinforcements. Who was he calling for? Sister Shui? Yi Xian shook his head, thinking that it was unlikely. Because Sister Shui had left. He knew that she had really left. If it was not Sister Shui, then there was only one possibility. Elder Gu was calling for someone from the Sword Sect. The Sword Sect. Was this mysterious force finally going to surface? Just when Ren Pingxing and the others were several dozen feet above Yi Xian's head, the space above the void suddenly split open, and 3 rays of sword light flashed out like lightning. Soon, 3 swordsmen appeared above Yi Xian's head. 3 men. The man in the lead was dressed in white and had a sword at his waist. As soon as he appeared, he did not waste any time and immediately drew his sword. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw this posture. Sword drawing technique. The sword technique that the man in white displayed was the sword drawing technique, the same sword technique that the man in green had taught him all those years ago. The moment the man in white unsheathed his sword, buzz. The sound of the sword rose into the sky and pierced through the clouds. Boom. The Emperor of Diabolism who was at the forefront was pushed back thousands of meters by the sword, and at almost the same time, Saint Tianhua was also pushed back by a ray of sword light. Not only that, but at the moment when the 2 of them were pushed back, a ray of sword light suddenly shot into the sky. In an instant, dozens of bloody heads shot into the sky, and the entire sky was sprayed with blood like a fountain. Saint Tianhua and the Daoist Demon Emperor were dumbfounded when they saw that. Instant kill? In just a breath's time, dozens of super experts from both clans had fallen. Just this one attack alone could be said to be a great blow to both clans. Not only were Saint Tianhua and Demon Emperor Daoist stunned, but all the experts present were also stunned, including Yi Xian below. The 3 swordsmen who had just appeared were stronger than Elder Gu. Why did the Sword Sect have so many super experts? In the distant horizon, Xiao Dao glanced at the three swordsmen. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, Elder Gu walked in front of the three swordsmen and bowed slightly. Senior Brother Lu, Senior Brother Li, Senior Brother Chen. The leading man in white smiled. I trust you've been well since we last met. Is the young lady well? Old Gu said, Young miss has left. The man in white frowned. Leave? Is she in danger? Old man Gu shook his head. It's not that miss is in danger, but, as he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Seeing this, the three men in white turned to look at Yi Xian. When they saw Yi Xian, the three of them were stunned. At this moment, the white-robed man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and grabbed Yi Xian's right hand. Before Yi Xian could react, a drop of blood essence shot out from the white-robed man's fingertip. The drop of blood essence floated in the air, red like fire. A short while later, the three of them had a strange look in their eyes. The white-robed man turned to look at Elder Gu. Elder Gu nodded. When the three of them saw this, their expressions softened when they looked at Yi Xian. The white-robed man smiled. Your sword Dao has entered the mortal realm? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The white-robed man smiled. Not bad. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at the sky. The Daoist demon emperor looked at the white-robed man with a solemn expression. Who are you? The white-robed man smiled. You don't need to know who I am. All you need to know is that those who offend the sword sect will be killed no matter how far they are. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly shot into the sky. Seeing this scene, the Daoist demon emperor's expression changed drastically. He suddenly roared with rage, heavenly demon physique. As soon as he finished speaking, a giant heavenly demon statue that was thousands of zhang long suddenly appeared behind him. As soon as the giant heavenly demon statue appeared, the heavens and the earth suddenly darkened. The giant heavenly demon statue's eyes were like blood as an invisible pressure swept across the heavens and the earth. At this moment, everyone felt like doomsday had arrived. At this moment, the giant heavenly demon statue suddenly swung its fist. The fist blotted out the sky. If it landed, the entire ground would shatter. Facing the white-robed man, the Daoist demon emperor did not dare to be careless. At this moment, a sword gleam suddenly slashed at the giant heavenly demon statue's fist. Bang! In the eyes of the experts, the giant fist suddenly split open. Following this, the sword gleam pierced through the Daoist demon emperor's chest. The sound of something slicing and a cry of agony resounded in the heavens and earth at the same time. Following this, the giant heavenly demon statue gradually turned illusory, along with the Daoist demon emperor. Saint Tianhua and the others' faces darkened at the sight of this. A single slash. The Daoist demon emperor could not even take a single slash from the white-robed man. Who is he? In the air, the Daoist demon emperor glared at the white-robed man. Who are you? The white-robed man smiled and suddenly slashed with the sword in his right hand. The Daoist demon emperor's head was sent flying, and blood spurted out like a fountain. At this moment, Yi Xian quickly released the soul-suppressing sword, which devoured the Daoist demon emperor's soul in a frenzy. To the soul-suppressing sword, such a powerful soul was a great supplement. The white-robed man turned his head to look at Saint Tianhua. Saint Tianhua said in a deep voice, Sir, I, the protector, am under the protection of the heavens and Tendo. If you, the white-robed man shook his head. We are not afraid of any Tendo. After saying this, he shot into the sky. In the sky, Saint Tianhua's expression changed drastically. He stomped his right foot and said, Heavenly Sacred Fist. As soon as he said this, he flipped his body upside down in the air and smashed his fist down. Boom! A giant illusory fist that was thousands of meters long suddenly appeared in the sky and crashed down. The power of this punch was even stronger than that of the Daoist demon giant statue from before. Soon, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the punch landed on the sword's aura. Boom! The sword's aura shook violently and paused for a moment, but in the next moment, the sword's aura shot into the sky and shattered the punch. At the same time, the sword's aura pierced through Saint Tianhua's chest. Blood splattered everywhere. Ren Pingxing and the other experts from Tendo City turned pale at the sight of this. Saint Tianhua looked at the white-robed man below, and blood slowly flowed from the corner of his mouth. "What a powerful sword, sir." As soon as he said this, his body became illusory. At this moment, Yi Xian's soul-suppressing sword suddenly appeared above his head. Boom! The soul-suppressing sword instantly entered Saint Tianhua's head. In an instant, Saint Tianhua's soul was completely absorbed by the sword, and the sword's aura suddenly skyrocketed. The white-robed man glanced at the soul-suppressing sword and a trace of astonishment flashed across his eyes. Not a bad sword. The soul-suppressing sword trembled slightly as if it was responding. The man in white turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hesitated. "Senior, are you from the sword sect?" The white-clothed man nodded and smiled. "Sword sect's Lu Yunxian." Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Thank you for your help, senior." Lu Yunxian smiled and said, "We're family, no need to stand on ceremony." "One of our own?" Li Xian was stunned. Lu Yunxian asked again, "Aren't they on our side?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "I don't think I've joined the sword sect." Lu Yunxian smiled. "But you have learned the sword sect's sword techniques, right?" Yi Xian nodded. "That's true." Lu Yunxian grinned. "Don't dwell on it." As he spoke, he turned to look at Ren Pingxing and the others, and their expressions changed drastically when they saw Lu Yunxian look over. Meanwhile, Wuxia suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he gazed at Yi Xian. "My young friend Yi Xian, can you give my Sky Devil race a chance?" Lu Yunxian turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "No." Wuxia spoke solemnly. "If I die, then can you spare the Sky Devil race?" Yi Xian gazed at Wuxia. "No." Wuxia's expression instantly became ferocious, and a powerful aura swept out from within him. At the same time, his entire body suddenly started burning. Self-destruct. He knew that if he wanted to kill Yi Xian and the swordsman, then he only had one chance, and that chance was to detonate himself. He'd chosen to detonate himself decisively because he knew that he would die if he didn't. If he chose to detonate himself, then perhaps he would be able to drag someone down with him. However, he'd underestimated the white-clothed man's strength. At the instant that Wuxia chose to detonate himself, a sword suddenly stabbed into the center of his forehead. As soon as the sword stabbed into him, the powerful energy within Wuxia's body was instantly suppressed by a powerful strand of sword intent. Wuxia roared madly with rage, and he wanted to release the powerful energy within his body. However, no matter what he did, that energy was firmly suppressed and couldn't charge out from within his body. At this moment, Wuxia felt despair. Wuxia gazed at Yi Xian. "Please spare the members of the Sky Devil race." Yi Xian chuckled. "Would you spare me if I lost? Would you spare me from the Worldwide Academy?" Wuxia wanted to say something else, but Yi Xian suddenly said, "You've chosen to be my enemy, and since you've chosen to be my enemy, then you must bear the consequences." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly swung his sword. Wuxia's head flew into the air. In the sky, Ren Pingxing suddenly said, "Retreat! Retreat!" As soon as he finished speaking, the Tendo experts behind him fled. Yi Xian looked at Ren Pingxing. Ren Pingxing ran the fastest, and he directly entered the spatial teleportation formation. Right at this moment, Yi Xian was about to attack, but the white-clothed man by his side moved even faster. A sword suddenly stabbed into the center of Ren Pingxing's forehead. Bang! Ren Pingxing's soul was obliterated. The white-clothed man pressed his fingers together lightly, and a sword shot through the sky. Bloody heads fell incessantly from the sky. All the experts in the surroundings were shocked when they witnessed this scene. The white-clothed man's strength is too formidable. In a short while, at least 10,000 heads fell, and blood poured down from the sky like a fountain. It was extremely bloody. However, there were still many who fled. The white-clothed man did not chase after them, but turned to look at the sky. In the distant horizon, there stood a woman. Yi Xian turned and saw the woman. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. This woman was none other than Arrow. So she had come. Yi Xian's heart warmed slightly. The white-clothed man looked at Arrow. and the next moment he suddenly unsheathed his sword, and a ray of sword light cut through the sky, slashing at Arrow. In the distance, Arrow suddenly drew his sword and placed it against his throat. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. Chapter 1053. When Arrow placed his sword on his throat, Yi Xian was shocked. He wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The white-robed man's sword light disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the white-robed man's throat split open, and blood spurted out. Yi Xian was shocked. He looked at the white-robed man. The white-robed man retreated several thousand zhang. When the white-robed man stopped, he touched his throat and looked at Arrow. Arrow looked at Yi Xian and said, "Let's go." With that said, she turned around and disappeared. The 100 white-robed experts with blades also followed closely behind and left. Yi Xian turned to look at the white-robed man. The white-robed man smiled and said, "It's fine." She showed mercy. Hearing that, Yi Xian's heart relaxed. At the same time, he was shocked. Without a doubt, Arrow's strength was above the white-robed man. How strong was Arrow? Yi Xian had no idea. At this time, the white-robed man suddenly smiled and said, "Junior brother, it's time for us to leave." Yi Xian looked at the white-robed man and asked, "Senior brother, you're leaving?" The white-robed man nodded. "The three of us have important responsibilities. It's not good for us to stay here for long." Yi Xian hesitated and asked, "Senior brother, where are you?" The white-robed man smiled and said, "Somewhere far away. We'll meet again in the future." With that said, he turned to old Gu and said, "Junior brother Gu, take good care of junior brother." With that said, the three turned into 3 rays of sword light and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the horizon. They left. Yi Xian fell silent. Sword sect. Originally, he thought that the sword sect had declined. But now, it seemed that the sword sect had not declined. In fact, it was extremely strong. Just a few of them could beat up a sovereign realm expert. Right at this time, Zhang Wenxiu walked to Yi Xian's side and asked, "What should we do now?" Yi Xian said softly, "Kill them all." Zhang Wenxiu wanted to say something but hesitated. Yi Xian looked at Zhang Wenxiu. "Wenxiu, we can't be merciful." With that, he looked up at Xiao Dao in the distance. "Miss Xiao Dao, I need to borrow your teleportation array." If he wanted to go to the Tendo Star Field, he would have to use the Xiao Dao's teleportation formation. Otherwise, with his strength, it would take him at least 10 years to reach there. Xiao Dao was silent. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Miss Xiao Dao, you won't stop me, will you?" Xiao Dao shook his head. "I didn't stop them from looking for you, so I won't stop you from looking for them." With that, she gently waved her lily-white hand and a teleportation array appeared in front of Yi Xian. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "What do you want to do?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Miss Xiao Dao, what do you think?" Xiao Dao nodded slightly. "It's not as simple as you think." Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Dao said again, "Come to the pawnshop when you have time." With that, she disappeared. Yi Xian turned to look at Zhang Wenxiu. "Wait for me here." Zhang Wenxiu said, "Will you come back?" Yi Xian smiled. "Definitely." With that, he and Mr. Gu entered the teleportation formation. Soon, the two disappeared. At this moment, the headmaster appeared beside Zhang Wenxiu. He looked at the place where Yi Xian and Mr. Gu disappeared and said softly, "He won't let it go." Zhang Wenxiu nodded. There was a trace of worry in her eyes. In the pawnshop of the boundless underground city, Xiao Dao sat behind the counter and flipped through an ancient book. After a while, she shook her head and said softly, "Things are getting more and more serious." With that, she closed the ancient book. At this moment, a woman appeared in the pawnshop. A one-legged woman. Xiao Dao looked at the one-legged woman. "Why are you here again?" The one-legged woman said, "The sword sect." Xiao Dao smiled. "You want to know about the sword sect?" The one-legged woman was silent. Xiao Dao smiled and handed the ancient book to the one-legged woman. After a while, the one-legged woman frowned deeply. Xiao Dao took the ancient book and said, "Surprised?" The one-legged woman was silent. Xiao Dao suddenly asked, By the way, aren't you tired of staying here for so long? The one-legged woman said calmly, Aren't you the same? Xiao Dao smiled. I'm a little bored. The one-legged woman suddenly turned and left. When she reached the door, she suddenly turned and looked at Xiao Dao. Is the sword sect the strongest power? Xiao Dao nodded. Yes. The one-legged woman was silent for a while and asked, How strong is it? Xiao Dao smiled. Guess. The one-legged woman glanced at Xiao Dao. Boring. With that, she turned and disappeared. In the pawnshop, Xiao Dao turned and walked behind the counter. She glanced at the ancient book on the counter with a gloomy expression. No one knew what she was thinking. After a while, Xiao Dao stood up and left. Tendo Galaxy. Yi Xian and Mr. Gu arrived at Tendo Galaxy. In the sky above Tendo City, Yi Xian looked down expressionlessly. At this moment, Tendo City felt threatened. Countless Tendo powerhouses had gathered. However, there were only a few powerhouses left in Tendo City. Yi Xian saw two familiar figures in the crowd below. It was Tian Han and Tian Yen. At this moment, both of them were looking at Yi Xian as well. They were naturally aware of what had happened between Yi Xian, Tendo City, and the Sky Fiend clan. Without a doubt, Yi Xian was here to take revenge. Neither of them had expected that things would develop to this point. In the sky, Yi Xian withdrew his gaze and said, Kill! Mr. Gu nodded. He transformed into a ray of light and charged down. An old man suddenly roared furiously when he saw Mr. Gu charging down. Defend! As soon as he spoke, countless powerhouses of Tendo City charged into the sky. Tian Han and Tian Yen were about to attack as well. Right at this moment, Yi Xian appeared before them. Tian Han looked at Yi Xian. Can you let Tendo City go? At this moment, all the powerhouses of Tendo City were being slaughtered. In the entire city of Tendo, no one was Mr. Gu's match. He was a sovereign realm expert. Not to mention these people, even Saint Tianhua wouldn't be able to defeat Mr. Gu in a one-on-one battle. But now, there were no sovereign realm experts in the entire city of Tendo. Even rebirth realm experts were rare. Hearing Tian Han's words, Yi Xian shook his head. No! Tian Han's face sank. So, at this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, You want to save Tendo City? Tian Han looked at Yi Xian. What do you mean? Yi Xian looked at Tian Han and said, You will be the city lord of Tendo City. Tian Han frowned. What do you mean? Tian Yen suddenly said, He wants to control the star field of Tendo. Yi Xian looked at Tian Yen. Tian Yen said calmly, If you don't want him to destroy Tiandao City, there's only one possibility, and that is for Tiandao City to have a different master, a master who listens to him. She looked at Yi Xian. Am I right? Yi Xian smiled. Yes. In fact, Tian Yen was the best candidate. However, he didn't choose Tian Yen because she was too scheming. Of course, the real reason was because he had a good impression of Tian Han. At this time, Tian Han suddenly said, As long as I agree to be the city lord of Tendo City, will you stop the slaughter? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Tian Han said, They won't listen to me. Yi Xian smiled. I will kill whoever doesn't listen to me. Tian Han looked at Yi Xian for a moment and said, Fine. I'll be the city lord of Tendo City. Yi Xian nodded, and then he turned around to look at Old Gu. Old Gu, that's enough. Old Gu stopped. Countless experts of Tendo City gazed at Old Gu, and their eyes were filled with fear. Yi Xian glanced at them and said, From this moment onward, Tian Han is the city lord of Tendo City. Is there anyone who doesn't agree with this? No one dared to answer him. Yi Xian turned around to look at Tian Han. If anyone in the city dares to disagree with you in the future, then tell me, and I'll kill them for you. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Tian Han fell silent. She knew that she couldn't leave Yi Xian, because there were definitely many people in Tendo City who didn't agree with her. If Yi Xian wasn't there to suppress her, then she wouldn't be able to hold her position as the city lord. Simply speaking, if she wanted to save Tendo City, then she had to be the city lord, and she had to listen to Yi Xian. Because if she wasn't controlled by Yi Xian, then she wouldn't be able to hold her position as the city lord of Tiandao City. Right at this moment, Tian Yen spoke abruptly, "This is already the best outcome." Tian Han looked at Tian Yen, and Tian Yen spoke softly, "If Big Sister hadn't formed that good karma with him, then Tendo City would have definitely suffered a massacre today." Tian Han fell silent. Tian Yen spoke softly, "Let's look at it from another angle. Actually, this might not be a bad thing for our Tian family. The forces behind Yi Xian are so formidable, and it's a good thing for our Tian family to have him as our backing." Tian Han spoke in a low voice. "He glanced at you earlier. Actually, he should have chosen you." Tian Yen shook her head. "He won't choose me." Tian Han asked, "Why?" Tian Yen spoke softly, "My thoughts are deep, deeper than yours." Hearing this, Tian Han understood. At this moment, Tian Yen spoke again. "He's making use of us, and we can also make use of him to strengthen the Tian family. Of course, if no one in our Tian family surpasses him in strength, then the primary position between us will always be him being the secondary." Saying that, she paused for a moment. "Of course, this isn't a bad thing." Tian Han nodded. "Indeed, it's not a bad thing." Saying that, she looked up at the sky. "Will the Heavenly Fiend clan surrender as well?" Tian Yen did not speak. Soon, Yi Xian and Gu Gu arrived at Heavenly Demon City. At this moment, countless Heavenly Fiend clans powerhouses had gathered in Heavenly Demon City. Apart from that, there was a huge black array in the sky above Heavenly Demon City. That array was like a needle disc suspended above Heavenly Demon City. On top of Heavenly Demon City's city walls, there were countless Heavenly Fiend clans powerhouses. It could be said that all the powerhouses of the Heavenly Fiend clan had arrived. And the one leading them was Lin Mo. At this moment, Yi Xian and Gu Gu appeared in front of Lin Mo. Yi Xian looked at Lin Mo. Lin Mo smiled. "Yi Xian, you're here for revenge." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Lin Mo smiled. "I know about what happened in Tendo City." Yi Xian smiled. "What's your choice?" Lin Mo looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "You're going to be disappointed. My Heavenly Fiend clan would rather die than surrender." Yi Xian nodded and turned to look at Gu Gu. "Massacre the city. Kill all the martial artists. P.S. I know I'm guilty and dare not speak further." Chapter 1054. Ancient Gu charged down when he heard Yi Xian, and an expanse of sword light descended. Bang! In an instant, a few dozen heads flew into the air. Suddenly, the formation in the sky above Sky Devil City started to revolve, and it didn't take long for an enormous beam of light to erupt from within it and blast towards Ancient Gu. Ancient Gu's face was emotionless as he pressed his fingers together and pointed downwards. A sword suddenly flew out from the sword chest on his back, and it slashed against the beam of light. Bang! An explosion resounded as the black ray of light shattered. At the same time, Ancient Gu slashed down once more. The sword tore through the air and slashed directly at the disc needle formation. In an instant, the entire disc needle formation collapsed. The expressions of the countless experts of the Sky Devil race instantly became unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Lin Mo, who stood before Yi Xian, suddenly leaped up and blasted his palm towards Yi Xian. At the same time, the other two extraordinary experts of the Sky Devil race attacked in unison. Obviously, they intended to deal with Yi Xian first. Yi Xian's face was emotionless. He suddenly drew his sword when Lin Mo's group of three suddenly charged towards him. Bang! A ray of sword light slashed down, and Lin Mo was instantly blasted flying. At the same time, two bloody heads drifted down to the ground beneath Yi Xian's feet. Ancient Gu's expression eased up slightly when he witnessed this scene, and then he turned around and stabbed with his sword. A ray of sword light shot forward, and a head flew into the air. Even though Ancient Gu was formidable, the experts of the Sky Devil race didn't shrink back, and they charged incessantly towards Ancient Gu. Fight to the death. At this moment, all the experts of the Sky Devil race had chosen to fight to the death. Lin Mo gazed at Yi Xian with a ferocious expression on his face. Yi Xian. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished. Lin Mo's pupils constricted, and then he crossed his arms before him to block Chen Shi's attack. Bang! The ray of sword light shattered, and Lin Mo was instantly pushed over 1 kilometer back. As soon as he stopped moving, his arms were instantly blasted into pieces. Lin Mo's face sank when he witnessed this scene. He raised his head to look at Yi Xian, and he was just about to speak when a ray of sword light flashed through his throat at a shocking speed. A stream of blood spurted from Lin Mo's throat. Lin Mo's eyes were wide open as he breathed his last. Yi Xian turned and looked into the distance. At this moment, bloody heads were falling from the sky, accompanied by fresh blood. Massacre. With ancient Gu's strength, there was no one in the Sky Devil clan who could stop him. Not only could no one stop old Gu, no one could stop Yi Xian either. Although Yi Xian's combat strength wasn't as strong as Gu's, his defensive capabilities were even more terrifying than Gu's. Ordinary forces wouldn't be able to harm him at all. Within Heavenly Devil City, Heavenly Devil race's experts were dying one after another. In the beginning, these Heavenly Devil race's experts had chosen to fight to the death, but towards the end, some Heavenly Devil race's experts began to flee. That was because Yi Xian and Elder Gu were too powerful. About 2 hours later, Elder Gu and Yi Xian stopped. At this moment, Heavenly Devil City was littered with corpses, and the city was filled with the pungent smell of blood. It could be said that all the top-notch experts in Heavenly Devil City had been slaughtered. Not far in front of Yi Xian, the soul-suppressing sword floated quietly, devouring the souls around it. Looking at the soul-suppressing sword before him, Yi Xian smiled. Elder Gu, what do you think of this sword? Elder Gu glanced at the soul-suppressing sword. Not bad. Yi Xian nodded. It's not bad indeed. The soul-suppressing sword had been with him for so long that it had long surpassed its original level. It could be said that if it continued to devour souls like this, even the executing heaven sword wouldn't be able to compare to it. This was because it would continue to grow stronger. At this moment, Elder Gu scanned the surroundings. There won't be any Heavenly Devil race in the future. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go. Having said that, he turned and left with Elder Gu. At this moment, a pitch-black whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sky above Heavenly Devil City. Soon, a shadow appeared in the black whirlpool. Yi Xian and Elder Gu turned around. Elder Gu's eyes narrowed as he looked at the shadow, and the sword chest on his back trembled as it accumulated energy. Yi Xian looked at the shadow emotionlessly. The Heavenly Devil race? The shadow said, Yi Xian, you're really ruthless. Yi Xian smiled. Ruthless? I think I'm merciful enough. The shadow sneered. Merciful? Yi Xian, I'll remember this. As soon as he finished speaking, the shadow gradually turned illusory. Meanwhile, Yi Xian spoke abruptly, Elder Gu, kill him. As soon as he spoke, Elder Gu vanished on the spot, and a ray of light slashed towards the shadow. Meanwhile, the shadow suddenly smashed his fist forward. Bang! The ray of light shattered. Yi Xian frowned when he saw that. Elder Gu frowned slightly as well. He was about to attack again when the shadow had turned completely illusory. He vanished. Yi Xian's face sank. Meanwhile, Elder Gu said, This person isn't simple. Young master, you must be careful. Yi Xian nodded. He glanced at the surroundings and vanished on the spot. He didn't leave right away. Instead, he started to plunder the Heavenly Devil race's treasures. The Heavenly Devil race's treasures naturally weren't attractive to him, but they were very useful to the people around him. The reason he subdued Tendo City was to develop his own forces. In a short while, Yi Xian ransacked the entire Tendo City. At this moment, Heavenly Devil City had become an empty city because those who were lucky enough to survive had basically fled. The news of Yi Xian slaughtering the Heavenly Devil race spread quickly. Of course, most people were talking about the swordsman behind Yi Xian. The swordsman who killed several Sovereign Realm experts in Tendo City and the Heavenly Devil race as soon as they appeared. The Sword Sect. This mysterious force gradually emerged in the eyes of the world. After Yi Xian and Elder Gu left Heavenly Devil City, the two of them arrived at Tendo City. In a great hall, Yi Xian summoned Tian Han and Tian Yen. Yi Xian looked at Tian Han. Are there any difficulties? Tian Han said solemnly, There were in the beginning, but after massacring Heavenly Devil City, The voices of opposition disappeared. Yi Xian nodded. Contact me if you need anything. Also, don't be merciful or you'll hurt yourself. Tian Han was silent. Yi Xian walked up to Tian Yen. Tian Yen wasn't afraid and looked straight at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, Sister Assist, do you understand what I mean? Tian Yen was silent. Yi Xian said again, Contact me if you need anything. Tian Yen asked, What do you want us to do? Yi Xian said, I'll contact you when I need you. With that he left with Elder Gu. In the hall, Tian Han sighed softly. At this moment, Tian Yen suddenly said, Sister, we should express our stance to him. Tian Han looked at Tian Yen. Tian Yen said softly, He won't be merciful to us a second time. Tian Han was silent. Yi Xian and Elder Gu returned to the Worldwide Academy. After returning, Yi Xian took out the Worldwide Library and the Prison Pagoda. Beside him were the female teacher, Zhang Wenxiu, and Elder Gu. The female teacher looked at the Worldwide Library in Yi Xian's hands and said softly, You're sure you want to open the library? Are you sure you want to open the library? Yi Xian nodded. Now that the Dao Protectors and the Heavenly Devil Clan have been destroyed, there shouldn't be anyone coming after me. The female teacher said, What if there is? Yi Xian smiled. Isn't that a good thing? I can see how many enemies I have. The female teacher nodded. That's true. Yi Xian's eyes slowly moved. He activated the prison pagoda. Soon, the prison pagoda shrank and turned into a beam of light that entered the Worldwide Library. Boom! A ray of light suddenly soared into the sky from the myriad-dimensional bookhouse. This ray of light directly entered the endless starry sky. At this moment, countless gazes from various star regions looked over. In the boundless underground city, a one-legged woman suddenly raised her head. She looked at the sky and frowned slightly. The next moment, she disappeared. Nothingness dimension. In the endless graveyard, the old tomb guard suddenly raised his head. A moment later, his brows furrowed deeply. In the pawnshop, Xiao Dao, who was lying on the counter, suddenly raised her head. She frowned. Do you want to die? In the Worldwide Academy, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw the huge commotion caused by the Worldwide Library and the prison pagoda. This commotion was too big. In the square, everyone looked at the library. At this moment, many powerful auras appeared in the sky above the Worldwide Academy. These auras were very obscure. Their true bodies hadn't appeared yet. They were hidden in the starry sky. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned slightly. There were still quite a number of powerhouses eyeing the Universal Dimension Library. Were they not afraid of death? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Not far from him, the sword box on Old Gu's back started to tremble. It was ready to strike at any moment. At this moment, the library suddenly shook violently. At the same time, the number of powerful auras in the surroundings increased. The weakest of these auras was at the ruler realm. At this moment, Yi Xian was shocked. In the sky, a white light suddenly appeared in the library. Within the white light there was a door. On the door, there was a small indent. At this time, the prison pagoda slowly floated towards the indent. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the Worldwide Library. In the surroundings, the number of powerful auras increased. Moreover, they were increasing at a rapid speed. Yi Xian's face turned gloomy. He hadn't expected so many experts to appear. Wasn't it just a library? At this time, a white figure suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian. This person was Xiao Dao. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Do you think you're invincible now? Yi Xian fell silent. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and said, There are two paths now. The first is to call the plain-dressed woman. The second is to call all the experts of the sword sect over. Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, Is it that serious? Xiao Dao's expression suddenly turned icy cold and said, I think you're getting arrogant. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Miss Xiao Dao, it isn't as serious as you think, right? Moreover, I should be able to protect myself now. Xiao Dao suddenly turned around to look at Old Gu, and then she smashed her fist forward. Old Gu's expression changed, and he swiftly drew his sword and slashed. Bang! Along with an explosion, Goo Goo instantly retreated several tens of thousands of feet under everyone's gazes. As soon as he stopped moving, a mysterious force immediately imprisoned him, causing him to be unable to move. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and said, "Come, tell me how to protect myself now." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "Miss Xiao Dao, if you don't." Xiao Dao suddenly roared furiously, "Idiot! My greatest reliance is the old man swordsman, and there are no less than 10 people here who can defeat him. Do you think I'll be safe if I don't act?" Chapter 1055. 10. Yi Xian frowned. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Dao added, "Once someone restrains him, how many can you, Yi Xian, fight against?" Yi Xian fell silent. Xiao Dao sucked in a deep breath. "Don't think that you're invincible just because you've grown stronger and a mysterious force has appeared behind you." With that said, she turned and left. At this time, a voice rang in Yi Xian's mind. "Don't open." It was Arrow's voice. Yi Xian didn't hesitate. With a wave of his right hand, the World Prison Pagoda and Myriad Dimension Library returned to his hand. Seeing this scene, the female teacher and Zhang Wenxiu heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, they were panicking just now. The number of experts in the sky above the Worldwide Academy was increasing. Moreover, these experts were very strong. Among them, there were more than 10 Sovereign Realm experts. Yi Xian didn't expect that there would be so many experts. Moreover, there were so many Sovereign Realm experts among them. This wasn't normal. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. Where did these Sovereign Realm experts come from? Originally, he thought that after slaughtering the Heavenly Devil race, he would be able to intimidate these forces. But now, it seemed like he wasn't able to do so. Just as Xiao Dao had said, he was a little arrogant. In other words, he had greatly underestimated the importance of the Myriad Dimension Library. Right at this time, the powerful auras in the sky gradually disappeared. Yi Xian swept a glance at the sky and turned to leave. As long as he didn't open the library, these forces wouldn't find trouble with him. However, the moment he opened it, these forces and experts would definitely take action. Just as Xiao Dao had said, unless he called for the woman in the plain dress or the experts from the sword sect. In a short while, the Worldwide Academy returned to normal. In the courtyard, Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta and the Myriad Dimension Library in front of him in silence. This thing was really a hot potato now. Zhang Wenxiu and the female teacher suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. The female teacher said, "I think it's not the right time yet." Yi Xian and Zhang Wenxiu looked at the headmaster. The headmaster said softly, "Since this study room is in your hands, it must be the master's intention. Since it cannot be opened now, it must be because the time is not right." Yi Xian said solemnly, "When will the time come?" The female teacher shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian sighed softly. The female teacher continued, "You don't have to worry. As long as you don't open the study room, those forces and experts won't dare to touch you. But if you open it, they will disregard everything." Yi Xian nodded. "I'm not worried about ordinary people. What I'm worried about is the endless dungeon, the dimension of nothingness, and Xiao Dao." His intuition told him that Xiao Dao might also be interested in that study room. The female teacher said, "No matter what, don't touch the study room now." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You guys be careful too. I'll make a trip back to Fuwen Zone." With that, he turned and left. As if he thought of something, he suddenly turned to look at Zhang Wenxiu and Zhang Wenxiu. "The two of you must reach the rebirth realm." Zhang Wenxiu shook her head. "It's not that simple." Yi Xian opened his palm, and an ancient book appeared in his hand. He handed it to the two women. "My sister left this for me. It should be of great help to the two of you." Zhang Wenxiu took the ancient book. After taking a look, her expression instantly turned serious. "You," Yi Xian said, "reach the rebirth realm as soon as possible." Zhang Wenxiu and the female teacher's combat strength was not weak. If they reached the rebirth realm, with the help of external objects, they could definitely fight against a ruler realm expert. After Yi Xian left the Worldwide Academy, Zhang Wenxiu and the female teacher went into seclusion. In order to let the two women break through to the rebirth realm with peace of mind, Yi Xian left old Gu in the academy. As for him, he returned to Fu Wenzong. Just as he returned to Fu Wenzong, a sword light suddenly slashed at him. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He suddenly pulled out his sword and stabbed it at the sword light. Boom! The sword light exploded, but in the next moment, a sword suddenly slashed at his forehead from a strange angle. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He dodged to the side and twisted his wrist. The sword in his hand slashed out horizontally. Bang! Yi Xian felt his sword being blocked by something. In the next moment, the sword light was already in front of his throat. He did not choose to block the sword. Instead, he stabbed out with his sword. The sword pierced thin air. Yi Xian looked at the opposite side. There was a little girl standing there. Little Seven. Little Seven stood there quietly, holding a sheathed sword in her hand. Little Seven looked at Yi Xian. With a strong physique, you can really do whatever you want. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely not dare to exchange their life for another like Yi Xian. But there was no other way. Yi Xian's physique was too strong. That sword strike was faster than Yi Xian's, but it was useless. Her sword could not kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. Little Seven, you are much stronger than before. Little Seven nodded. Yi Xian looked around. Where are Little N and Wang Lin? Little Seven said, they left. Left? Yi Xian frowned. Where did they go? Little Seven said, they went to train. Yi Xian's face sank. Little Seven suddenly said, don't worry too much. The two of them have reached the Karma realm. Their combat strength is extraordinary. Ordinary people will not be able to hurt them. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He was well aware of Enlanxiu's and Lian Wanli's strength. With their battle prowess, as long as they didn't run into a sovereign, they wouldn't be in any danger. Yi Xian looked at Little Seven. Are you going to wait for me? Little Seven nodded. I want to fight you. Yi Xian smiled. Okay. Little Seven looked at Yi Xian. Be careful. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared. A sword light instantly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian raised his sword to block. Boom. Yi Xian retreated several feet with his sword. At the same time, several afterimages of the sword flashed beside Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly struck with his sword. Boom, boom, boom. Yi Xian retreated several dozen feet again. The moment he stopped, a snow-white sword light descended from above his head. Yi Xian stabbed out. Heda. This sword stabbed into the sword light. The sword light exploded, and a sword blocked Yi Xian's sword. Boom. The space around Yi Xian cracked. At this moment, Little Seven, who was above Yi Xian's head, suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and raised his sword to block. Boom. A powerful force swept across his sword. In an instant, Yi Xian retreated several dozen feet. In front of Yi Xian, Little Seven disappeared again. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and slashed. Rumble. A wave of sword light exploded in front of Yi Xian. A shadow retreated. The one who retreated was Little Seven. The moment Little Seven stopped, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her. At the same time, a sword was already at her brow. She squinted her eyes and used her sword to block. Very quickly, her expression changed. She stomped her right foot and retreated hundreds of feet. After Little Seven stopped, she lowered her head and looked at her right wrist. There was a thin sword mark on it. Shao Qi looked at Yi Xian. That sword strike of yours was fake. Yi Xian nodded. Illusionary sword. Real and fake, it changes endlessly. Little Seven said, you just learned it? Yi Xian nodded. Do you want to learn it? Little Seven shook her head. Come, take my sword. After saying that, she held the sword with both hands and placed it on her brow. In the next moment, she disappeared from the spot. In the battlefield, a sword light slashed across. In the distance, Yi Xian squinted his eyes. He didn't choose to retreat. He stepped forwards and slashed with his sword. Sword to decide life and death. With this slash, Shao Qi's sword light was forced to stop, but it didn't disappear. Right at that moment, little Seven hollered in rage. She held the sword with both hands and spun it. Yi Xian retreated in a frenzy. Right at that moment, Yi Xian stomped his right foot and pushed forward with his sword. Long. The sword light exploded, and Shao Qi was sent flying dozens of feet away. After little Seven stopped, she looked at Yi Xian. Let's fight in the future. Yi Xian nodded and smiled. Okay. Little Seven sheathed her sword and said softly, I am leaving. Yi Xian frowned. Where are you going? Little Seven looked into the sky and said softly, a place that I don't know about. Yi Xian still wanted to ask, but Shao Qi suddenly turned into a sword light and disappeared into the horizon. She left. On the spot, Yi Xian kept silent. Where did little Seven go? Without thinking much, Yi Xian turned around and returned to Fu Wenzong. Inside Fu Wenzong, Yi Xian met Fu Wenzong sect leader Xianxia. Xianxia looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. The youth in front of him was much stronger than before. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly took out a storage ring and passed it to Xianxia. Xianxia looked at Yi Xian. This is? Yi Xian smiled. This is something I got from Sky Demon City. It should be very beneficial to the disciples and elders of Fu Wenzong. Xianxia took a look at the storage ring and very quickly, his expression changed. The things in the storage ring weren't ordinary. Xianxia looked at Yi Xian. This, Yi Xian said softly, give it to the disciples of Fu Wenzong. As for how to distribute it, old Xin, you decide. Don't reject it. Our Fu Wenzong needs to become stronger. Stronger? The current Fu Wenzong was still too weak compared to those ancient powers. If they were to go up against a power like Tendo City, Fu Wenzong wouldn't even have the strength to fight back. Xianxia kept the storage ring and asked, what do you plan to do next? Yi Xian said softly, become stronger. The current him could barely fight Sovereign Realm experts, but he didn't have the confidence to defeat them. Opening the study room made him realize that even though he had eliminated the Protectors and the Sky Demon clan, it didn't mean that he was in danger. Moreover, before Big Sister Shui left, she told him that she hoped he could fight alongside them in the future. He knew that Big Sister Shui was talking about the Sword Sect. In other words, the Sword Sect. The Sword Sect definitely had enemies. Moreover, the Sword Sect was so powerful, yet they still had enemies. One could only imagine how strong their enemies were. In addition, there was the Fifth Dimension Tribulation. The Fifth Dimension Tribulation that all the powers were afraid of. If the Fifth Dimension Tribulation came, what should he do? Right at this time, the ninth floor's voice suddenly sounded, I'll take you to a place. Yi Xian asked, where? The ninth floor said, the place I stayed in before. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment, then he asked, what is that place? The ninth floor said, the dimension of nothingness. Yi Xian was stunned. Right at this time, in the seventh floor of the World Prison Pagoda, the ninth floor who was lying on the ground suddenly opened his eyes, but he quickly closed them again. A faint voice sounded from the pagoda. Insufficient battery, please charge. Insufficient battery, please charge. P.S. Many thanks to the monthly ticket tips from friends like Ergo's surname Chen, and my Luan is unrivaled. The two brothers have given me too many tips. I really have to thank the two brothers. Recently, I haven't added any chapters, and I haven't broken through yet. Giving so many tips. I feel really guilty. Even I can't help but blush. When I told the people around me that someone had given me so many tips, they called me an idiot. How could such a thing happen? It's really too difficult to write in peace during the new year. I won't forget this breakthrough. As a person, I still have my principles. Chapter 1056. Nothingness Dimension. Yi Xian's face darkened. Naturally, he knew a little about this place. It was a very dangerous place. He did not expect the ninth floor to come from that place. Yi Xian asked, Senior, are you really from the nothingness dimension? The ninth floor replied, do I get anything out of lying to you? Yi Xian smiled, no, I'm just surprised. I didn't expect you to come from that place. The ninth floor replied after a moment of silence, "There's nothing surprising about that place." The place? Yi Xian listened quietly. He also wanted to know more about the nothingness dimension. However, the ninth floor did not want to talk about it. Yi Xian hesitated and said, "Senior, that place is dangerous." The ninth floor replied, "Yes." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "What kind of place is that?" The ninth floor was silent. Yi Xian said, "Senior, I don't think there's anything to hide, right?" The ninth floor replied, "You have to ask Xiao Dao." Yi Xian frowned, "Why?" The ninth floor replied, "I'm afraid of death." Yi Xian was speechless. The ninth floor added, "It's not that I don't want to tell you. I can't tell you about that place's origin and secret. I can't bear the consequences, but Xiao Dao can. You can ask her. She's not afraid of death." Yi Xian asked again, "Do you know about Xiao Dao's origin?" The ninth floor replied, "I don't." Yi Xian's face darkened. "Senior, what do you know?" The ninth floor sighed, "I'm helpless too. I can't tell you what I know, and I don't dare to ask what I don't know." Sigh. Yi Xian asked, "Senior, why do you want me to go to the nothingness dimension?" The ninth floor replied, "To reap benefits." Yi Xian's face darkened. "We're so close. Don't try to fool me." After a moment of silence, the ninth floor said, "If you want to reach the rebirth state as soon as possible, that place is the most suitable." Yi Xian frowned. "But?" "Because there are two things there, the tomb and the well of reincarnation. With these two items, you will have a much easier time reaching the rebirth state. Xiao Dao said that place is currently the #1 power because they have these two things. Of course, they don't just have these two things. In short, you'll know when you get there." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Wasn't it said to be very dangerous?" "It's dangerous, but you're different. Even Heaven's chosen one isn't a match for you. What are you afraid of?" Yi Xian was speechless. "Of course, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm asking you to go for a bit of a selfish reason. I want to go back and take a look. As for whether to go or not, it's up to you." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian asked, "Senior, can I really use those two items to quickly reach the rebirth state?" The ninth house replied, "Yes. Of course, the prerequisite is that you can borrow them." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "I'll give it a try." With that, he turned and left. Soon, Yi Xian arrived at the boundless underground city. Inside the pawnshop, Yi Xian walked into the pawnshop. Xiao Dao was still there. Xiao Dao glanced at him and didn't speak. Yi Xian chuckled, "Hello, Miss Xiao Dao." Xiao Dao was expressionless and didn't speak. Yi Xian walked to the counter. "Miss Xiao Dao, are you still angry?" Xiao Dao said indifferently, "Why should I be angry?" Yi Xian said, "The study room." Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian, "I'm not angry at all. Anyway, you're the one who dies, not me." Yi Xian said solemnly, "I underestimated the temptation of the study room. However, what I don't understand is, why do those super experts care so much about the study room? Could it be that the prophet is really a god in their hearts? What makes them think that the study room left behind by the prophet can resist the fifth dimension calamity?" Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian for a moment and said, "Not only did you underestimate the study room, but you also underestimated the prophet." Yi Xian asked, "Why do you say that?" Xiao Dao closed the ancient book on the counter and said, "The prophet has many books. They arts time, space, human, seamless, matter, past, present, future." As she said, she looked at Yi Xian. "If these books are measured in terms of items, the value of each book far surpasses any divine object in this world. Even ordinary swords are worthless in front of these books." Hearing this, Yi Xian frowned slightly. "So powerful?" A complicated look flashed in Xiao Dao's eyes. "We are pursuing longevity, pursuing the peak of martial arts, while he is pursuing the truth." "Truth?" Yi Xian was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Xiao Dao shook her head. "You illiterate." "Yi Xian," Xiao Dao said again, "you only need to understand one thing, that is, his understanding of this world, of this universe, surpasses that of anyone in this world. That's why he's so powerful." As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian. "Do you think I'm powerful?" Yi Xian nodded quickly. You're powerful, you're powerful. Xiao Dao said calmly, but I think he's powerful. Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. Suddenly Xiao Dao said, why are you here this time? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and said, Miss Xiao Dao, I want to ask you about the dimension of nothingness. Hearing this, Xiao Dao frowned slightly. Yi Xian, are you so arrogant that you can't recognize yourself? Yi Xian quickly said, it's ninth floor who asked me to go. Ninth floor suddenly said, damn. Why are you like this? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian's abdomen. You want him to go to the dimension of nothingness. After a moment of silence, ninth floor said, he has already reached the peak of the karma state. If he wants to reach the rebirth state without using the tomb and the reincarnation well, conservatively speaking, it will take at least a few decades. Xiao Dao said coldly, you came from that place, don't you know how dangerous it is? Ninth floor said, if anyone else goes there, they will die, but he is different. Xiao Dao was silent. Ninth floor said again, Miss Xiao Dao, I think we can let him try. Xiao Dao shook her head, then looked at Yi Xian, you make your own decision. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, is it very dangerous? Xiao Dao nodded, very dangerous. Yi Xian asked again, how dangerous? Xiao Dao smiled, it will definitely be the most dangerous place you have ever encountered. Yi Xian frowned, why? Xiao Dao shook her head, no longer saying anything. Yi Xian was a little afraid. He quickly asked again, Miss Xiao Dao, tell me more. Xiao Dao said indifferently, my suggestion is not to go. Of course, if you want to reach the rebirth state, that place is indeed your best choice, but high opportunities also mean high risks. So you do as you see fit. Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Dao glanced at Yi Xian. Do you know who the last figure that appeared in Sky Demon City was? Yi Xian shook his head. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. That was the leader of the Sky Demon race, an ancient ruler. This patriarch is an ancient paragon. He won't let you off for destroying the Celestial Devil clan. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss Xiao Dao, do you think I should go to the void dimension? Xiao Dao smiled, this is your choice, I won't say anything. Yi Xian sighed, turned around, and left. At this moment, a gust of wind came from behind him. Yi Xian stopped, turned around, and a black bag landed in front of him. He looked at Xiao Dao, this is? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian, it's for you. Saying that, she walked in front of Yi Xian, don't open it unless it's absolutely necessary. Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned, then bowed respectfully, thank you. Xiao Dao said calmly, let's go. Yi Xian smiled, Miss Xiao Dao, do you have any life-saving divine items? For example, the Needle of Fate, I think it's very good. Xiao Dao suddenly said, scram. Yi Xian. A moment later, Yi Xian left the pawn shop, and when he left, he was abnormally happy. In the pawn shop, Xiao Dao shook her head, smiled, and took out an ancient book to read. The first page of the book had 2 words, space. After Yi Xian left the pawn shop, he stopped on the street, because not far in front of him stood a one-legged woman. Danger. That was what Yi Xian was feeling at this moment. The one-legged woman looked at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, Senior, is there something? The one-legged woman floated in front of Yi Xian, looked at Yi Xian and said, can you not come back? Her voice was as cold as ice. Yi Xian was stunned, and then said seriously, Senior, I like it here. The one-legged woman looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said seriously, Senior, The one-legged woman suddenly said, do me a favor. Yi Xian blinked and then hurriedly said, Senior, please speak. This one-legged woman in front of him was not ordinary, and if he could form a good relationship with her, it would definitely be a good thing. The one-legged woman looked at Yi Xian, my hands are itching. Yi Xian was stunned. At this moment, the one-legged woman punched at Yi Xian's face. Yi Xian did not even have time to react, and was directly punched in the face. Boom! Yi Xian was sent flying, and this time he flew a few hundred zhang away. In the surroundings, some experts peeked out, but when they saw the one-legged woman, They instantly disappeared without a trace. In this boundless underground city, there were two people that must not be offended. One was Xiao Dao, and the other was this one-legged woman. In the distance, Yi Xian climbed up, and at this moment, the one-legged woman turned and left. Yi Xian said angrily, "How can you do this?" The one-legged woman turned to look at Yi Xian, one-on-one. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Kid, can you tolerate this?" "Brat, how can you tolerate this?" Ninth floor asked. The ninth floor suddenly said, "Kid, can you bear this?" "Fight her." Yi Xian said, "Senior, will you come out to help?" The ninth floor said, "Does it have anything to do with me?" "Fight her." Yi Xian. At this moment, the one-legged woman turned and left. Yi Xian hesitated, but in the end he did not choose to rush forward. That punch just now made him know that this woman's strength was definitely above Elder Gu's. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian turned and left, and soon he arrived at the nothingness dimension. Chapter 1057. The Dimension of Nothingness. Yi Xian had to admit that he was a little afraid of this place. However, he had to give it a try. Otherwise, it would take him a few decades to reach the rebirth realm at a normal speed. A few decades and he would have to pass the fifth dimension tribulation. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Senior, can you tell me a little about the dimension of nothingness now?" After a moment of silence, the ninth floor replied, "You will know once you enter." Yi Xian was speechless. This fellow is too afraid of death. Yi Xian shook his head. When he was about to enter, an old man suddenly appeared in front of him at this moment. The old tomb keeper. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw this person. This old man was no ordinary person. The old tomb keeper looked at Yi Xian. "What are you doing?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, "Miss Xiao Dao asked me to come." The ninth floor, the old tomb keeper shook his head. "Go back." Yi Xian thought for a moment before asking, "Am I not allowed to enter?" The old tomb keeper said, "If it were anyone else, I would not. However, if you want to enter, I can let you. However, this place is too dangerous for you. It is not suitable for you to enter now." Yi Xian frowned. "Then when is suitable for me to enter?" The old tomb keeper fell silent. At this moment, the ninth floor's voice suddenly sounded. "Let him in. His luck is heaven-defying. He should be fine." The old tomb keeper glanced at Yi Xian's abdomen. "Are you sure?" The ninth floor, "Ask him." Yi Xian. The old tomb keeper looked at Yi Xian. "Are you sure you want to enter?" Yi Xian thought for a moment before nodding. "Let's go in." The old tomb keeper nodded. "Then let's go in." With that, he and Yi Xian disappeared on the spot. A moment later, Yi Xian found himself in a cemetery. The sky here was dark and gloomy, and there was a bone-chilling wind blowing in the surroundings. At a glance, there were countless tombs. Yi Xian turned to look at the old man. "Senior, what kind of place is this?" The old man glanced at Yi Xian, shook his head, and left. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly followed. "Senior." Gravekeeper said, "I'm a gravekeeper." Yi Xian was silent. It was obvious that the other party was unwilling to tell him. At this time, the old man said, "Go to the right, there is a dry well 1,000 miles away. That is the well of reincarnation." Yi Xian wanted to ask something else, but the old man vanished without a trace. Yi Xian frowned. "Leaving just like that?" The ninth replied, "Go." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian turned around and disappeared. He didn't go and left the void dimension. Soon, Yi Xian arrived at the Tendo pawn shop and found Xiao Dao again. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "What's wrong?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "What kind of place is that?" Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. "You've been there?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiao Dao was silent for a moment before saying, "He doesn't dare to tell you?" Yi Xian nodded. The little Daoist nodded slightly. "Then let me tell you. That place is called the Graveyard of Gods and Demons." Graveyard of Gods and Demons. Yi Xian frowned. Gods? Demons? Xiao Dao sat down and said, "Before the ancient era was the era of gods and demons. Above the era of gods and demons, there was another era, the era of Tendo. She paused for a moment before continuing. The era of gods and demons was filled with true gods and demons. Yi Xian was a little taken aback. Real gods and demons? There were gods? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. Do you know why there were so many experts in the past? Because the earlier the era, the more abundant the spiritual energy was. During the era of gods and demons, the spiritual energy was at least 1,000 times more abundant than now. Even a pig could reach the rebirth state if it cultivated in that kind of environment. 1,000 times more abundant. Yi Xian's expression changed. If it was really 1,000 times more abundant, then it was too terrifying. Under such a different environment, the cultivators would definitely be different. 1,000 times. This could no longer be described as terrifying. At this time, Xiao Dao said, the people of that era were blessed by the heavens and enjoyed the blessings of the heavens. Cultivating in that kind of environment, their cultivation speed was unimaginable. Because of this, the experts of that era were extremely powerful. Saying this, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Don't ask me who was stronger between them and the plain-dressed woman. I don't want to beat you to death. Yi Xian, Xiao Dao continued. In that era, when some powerful beings reached their limits, from a certain perspective, they could be considered immortal. Of course, they could not be truly immortal. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? Xiao Dao smiled. Simply put, some people of that era, when their lifespan was about to end, they could use another method to survive. Yi Xian asked, what method? Xiao Dao blinked. Why do you know so much? Yi Xian, Xiao Dao continued. In short, the people of that era were really strong. They were so strong that rulers were everywhere. Yi Xian asked, what about the self-release realm? Xiao Dao shook her head. In that era, there were no self-release realms. There were 2 realms above rulers. When she spoke up to hear, she paused for a moment and said, the self-release realm can be said to be the highest realm of cultivation for now. Yi Xian asked, who has reached the self-release realm? Xiao Dao said calmly, you have to pay for this question. Yi Xian, Xiao Dao shook her head and said, actually, the environment is really important. Different environments create different lives. Yi Xian hesitated before asking, Miss Xiao Dao, if they were so strong in that era, why did they disappear now? Is it the 5th dimension tribulation? Xiao Dao nodded. Yi Xian frowned. The people of that era were so strong, but they couldn't resist the 5th dimension tribulation? Xiao Dao said calmly, if they could resist it, they wouldn't have to bury themselves. Yi Xian was shocked. Bury themselves? Xiao Dao nodded. Before the 5th dimension tribulation came, they had already divined it. At that time, they gathered all the powerful gods and sorcerers of that era. These people divined the 5th dimension tribulation and the future. They found that the tribulation was not something they could resist, so they used a secret technique to seal themselves and put themselves in a state of fake death. They used this method to avoid the 5th dimension tribulation and wait for an opportunity to revive. Yi Xian asked, wait for an opportunity to revive. Xiao Dao nodded. Yi Xian said, Miss Xiao Dao, did you just say that they could predict the future? Xiao Dao smiled. Don't you think it's unbelievable? Yi Xian nodded. Xiao Dao smiled. They could indeed predict the future, and they were very powerful. If it wasn't for that, they would have all died. Yi Xian shook his head. Predicting the future is too mysterious. Xiao Dao smiled. Don't doubt me. The martial arts civilization of that era was much more powerful than it is now. Of course, their so-called prediction of the future could only give a rough idea of the future. It was impossible to predict the details. But even so, it is still very powerful. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, Senior, did you say that they were waiting for an opportunity to revive? Xiao Dao nodded. Yi Xian asked, waiting for what opportunity? Xiao Dao softly said, waiting for someone who can block the 5th dimension tribulation to appear. Yi Xian was surprised, then he laughed. It can't be me, right? Xiao Dao's eyelids twitched. She looked at Yi Xian. Do you think you can do it? Yi Xian smiled. I'm just joking. Xiao Dao shook her head. The people of the God and Devil era are very powerful. If they all woke up, I don't know if it would be a good thing or a bad thing. Because for now, this era was chaotic enough. If they choose to wake up in this era, it would be even more chaotic. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Miss Xiao Dao, why do you know so much about the God and Devil era? Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. Because I was there when the God and Devil era sealed themselves. Yi Xian blinked. You were there? Xiao Dao smiled. I saw them collectively seal themselves. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, Miss Xiao Dao, aren't you afraid of the fifth dimension tribulation? Xiao Dao grinned. Why don't you guess? Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He wanted to hit someone, but he couldn't. After a while, Yi Xian asked again, Miss Xiao Dao, who are you? Xiao Dao's smile became more and more brilliant. Why don't you guess? Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing Yi Xian's unsightly expression, Xiao Dao covered her mouth and smiled. Don't guess who I am. In any case, you definitely won't be able to guess. Yi Xian nodded. Miss Xiao Dao, I won't ask you questions that you definitely won't answer. I'll ask you 2 questions that you can answer. Will the people of the God and Devil era choose to wake up in this era? Xiao Dao was silent. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Dao, waiting for her answer. At this time, Xiao Dao softly said, if they wake up in this era, it means that they feel that there are people in this era who can stop the fifth dimension tribulation. This is a good thing. However, if they wake up, it means that the world will become more chaotic. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. Don't think that you are invincible or that you can do whatever you want just because you have a powerful backer. This world isn't as simple as you think. Yi Xian was silent. At this time, Xiao Dao smiled. Actually, don't think that it's so scary. They are all in deep sleep now. If you go, it won't be that dangerous. Yi Xian suddenly said, the 9th floor is from the void dimension. In other words, he is from the legendary God and Devil era? Xiao Dao shook her head. He isn't from the God and Devil era. He is a bit special. Yi Xian asked, how special? The little Daoist smiled and said, ask him yourself. Yi Xian shook his head and turned to leave. This guy definitely wouldn't say anything. When he reached the door, Yi Xian suddenly stopped and turned to look at Xiao Dao. In this world, are there people from the Tendo era? Xiao Dao nodded. Yes. Moreover, you have come into contact with them. Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. P.S. Once again, I thank the readers of My Luan is Unrivaled for their donations. I also thank all the readers who donated and voted. Thank you for everyone's support. It would erupt once this month. He meant what he said. If I can't do it, I am not a man. Chapter 1058. Had contact with him? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. At this time, Xiao Dao didn't want to say anything. Yi Xian left. Watching Yi Xian leave, the Daoist in the pawn shop shook his head. This guy. At this time, the one-legged woman appeared in the pawn shop. The one-legged woman looked at Xiao Dao. Are you really going to let him go? Xiao Dao said softly, what else? The one-legged woman was silent. Xiao Dao looked at the one-legged woman and smiled. Actually, you want to see if he will succeed, don't you? The one-legged woman was silent for a while. What are you planning? Hearing this, Xiao Dao squinted his eyes. After leaving the pawn shop, Yi Xian went to the void dimension again. In the graveyard, Yi Xian walked slowly. At this time, the 9th person suddenly asked, what are you thinking about? Yi Xian said softly, Senior, who do you think Xiao Dao is? The 9th person said, she is very mysterious. Maybe only the legendary Tendo knows her true identity. Yi Xian said, she has done so many things. She must be planning something. The 9th person said, your study room. Yi Xian frowned. Then why didn't she take it from me? The 9th person sighed. Others don't know how scary you are, but she definitely knows. Not only do you have the plain-dressed woman behind you, but she is also the young master of the number 1 power in the 5th dimension. Even she wouldn't dare to use force on you. Yi Xian, the ninth person said, don't worry too much. In any case, she doesn't have any evil intentions towards you, right? Yi Xian nodded. My priority now is to reach the rebirth state. After saying this, he quickened his pace. Along the way, the surroundings were silent. Yi Xian kept looking around at the tombs. There were differences between the tombs. Some were big, some were small, and some had mysterious runes around them. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior, were you also lying in the graveyard? The ninth person smiled and said, I came out from here, but not from the fiend god age. Yi Xian blinked. What do you mean? The ninth house said, You're too curious. Yi Xian smiled. Can you tell me about it? The ninth replied, You'll find out soon enough. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He turned his head and looked not far away. A few dozen feet away from him, there was a tomb that suddenly trembled. Seeing this, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. What the hell? Yi Xian said solemnly, Senior? The ninth house said, I don't know what it is. Why don't we take a look together? Yi Xian was speechless. This fellow's curiosity is just as strong as mine. Yi Xian pondered for a moment and decided to take a look. Right at this time, the tomb's soil suddenly parted, and a blood-red coffin appeared in front of Yi Xian. Seeing this coffin, Yi Xian's heart shuddered. This person isn't someone to be trifled with. The ninth house said, What are you afraid of? You have the shining dragon armor, the Sumeru shield, the undying body, and the undying body. Even a sovereign realm expert won't be able to kill you easily. Yi Xian thought about it for a moment. That's true. Hence, he gave up on escaping and continued to stare at the coffin. What's there to be afraid of? The coffin's lid suddenly moved to the right, and a jade-white hand slowly reached out from the coffin. A woman. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Could it be another superwoman? From the beginning until now, he had discovered that there were more than enough superwomen in the world. At this moment, a woman slowly floated out of the coffin. She wore a snow-white dress and had a head full of silver hair that reached her buttocks. Her sleeves were shaped like a fan, and in her left hand, she held a strange staff. At the top of the staff, there was a snow-white ball. The woman's eyes were closed, but her facial features were exquisite and could cause the downfall of cities and states. Yi Xian looked at the woman, and he asked in his heart, Senior, can you feel her aura? The ninth house said, No. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but at this moment, the woman suddenly turned her head to look at Yi Xian. The corners of Yi Xian's eyes twitched, and he nodded slightly. Closer. At this moment, the woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian without making a sound. Yi Xian's face changed, and he gripped the executing heaven sword in his left hand. Fortunately, the woman had no intention of attacking him. At this moment, the woman suddenly spoke. Her voice was like the chirping of an oriole, very pleasant to the ear. Yi Xian blinked. What about me? The woman looked at Yi Xian, not the Dimensions child, but more than that. Yi Xian frowned. Dimensions child? The woman smiled. Fortune-telling? The free kind? Yi Xian was taken aback. Then he said, Are you the legendary divine master? The woman shook her head. I'm a sorcerer. A sorcerer. Yi Xian looked at the woman, and he wondered why a sorcerer wore such white clothes. The woman asked again, Do you read my fortune? Yi Xian was confused. Why do you want to read my fortune? The woman smiled. Your fate is very strong. I've never seen anyone with such a strong fate. Yi Xian thought about it, then said, You read my fortune. The woman nodded, and she held the staff in her hand and gently placed it between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! A white light suddenly enveloped Yi Xian, and Yi Xian frowned. At this moment, the woman raised her head slightly, and her gaze pierced through the starry sky, and it didn't take long for her gaze to arrive at the four-dimensional universe. In an unknown starry sky, a woman in a plain dress suddenly stopped, and she turned around with a gaze that was as cold as ice without a trace of emotion. In the nothingness dimension, the woman looked at the woman in the plain dress. Soon, Strange and mysterious red runes appeared above the woman in the plain dress. She was reading the woman's fortune. The woman in the plain dress just looked at the woman without saying anything or resisting. A short moment later, the blood-red runes suddenly vanished without a trace. The woman suddenly opened her eyes when she saw this. Her pupils were blood-red. The woman said in disbelief, "You don't have a fate." The woman in the plain dress opened her palm, and a strand of sword light suddenly shot into the sky. In the next moment, the sword light pierced through the galaxy and arrived in the nothingness dimension. The expression of the woman in front of Yi Xian changed drastically when she saw this. At this moment, her face was filled with terror, and she seemed to have thought of something. She suddenly pounced into Yi Xian's arms. "Save me!" Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Save her? In next to no time, Yi Xian understood, because a strand of sword light had appeared in his field of vision. The woman in the plain dress's sword light. She had attacked again. Yi Xian knew that the woman in front of him had definitely offended the woman in the plain dress. Should I save her? While Yi Xian was hesitating, the strand of sword light had already arrived behind the woman. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it and pulled the woman behind him. At this moment, the strand of sword light stopped and gradually vanished. The woman in Yi Xian's arms heaved a sigh of relief when she saw this scene. The woman raised her head to look at Yi Xian, and she said gently, "Thank you." Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Why did you offend her?" The woman shook her head with a slightly complicated expression. "I divined your fate. Your fate is related to her, and then I deduced it to her." When she spoke up to this point, she paused for a moment and said, "There's actually such a strong person. How terrifying." Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Are you from the era of gods and fiends?" The woman nodded. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he asked, "Was there anyone stronger than her during the era of gods and fiends?" The woman looked at Yi Xian, and she thought for a moment before she said, "I don't know her true strength." Yi Xian understood when he heard this. The woman looked at Yi Xian. "You're weaker." Yi Xian's face darkened. The woman suddenly said, "I'm called a Mu, the high priestess of the Wu clan." "High priestess?" Yi Xian was startled, and then he said, "Is your status very high?" Mu didn't reply. She slowly closed her eyes, and her left hand pinched her fingers as if she was calculating something. After a moment, she said softly, "The fifth dimension tribulation is coming." "Fifth dimension tribulation?" Yi Xian said, "Are you all going to wake up?" Mu looked at Yi Xian and she was curious. "What are you doing here?" Yi Xian said, "I'm looking for the well of reincarnation and the grave." Mu frowned. "Grave? The well of reincarnation?" Yi Xian nodded. Mu said softly, "I'll take you to the grave." After saying that, she turned around and walked away. Yi Xian hurriedly followed. He walked to Mu's side, and then he said, "Miss Mu, is the grave dangerous?" Mu said, "It's dangerous for you to go alone." Yi Xian asked, "What exactly is a grave?" Mu said softly, "A grave means death, and death means reincarnation." Yi Xian still wanted to ask something, but Mu suddenly quickened her pace. Soon, she brought Yi Xian to a dense forest. In the dense forest, there was a huge grave. Around the grave, there were all kinds of blood-red runes, and in front of the grave, there was a wordless gravestone. Yi Xian looked at Mu, and Mu said, "Go in. It can help you comprehend reincarnation." Yi Xian hesitated, and then he said, "Is it dangerous?" Mu nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian was speechless. Mu looked at Yi Xian. "Go in." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "It's dangerous." Mu said, "It's fine." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he walked towards the grave. When he arrived in front of the grave, a powerful force suddenly swept out from it. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Bang! As soon as his sword descended, the force was directly shattered by him. However, at this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him, and before he could react, a fist suddenly smashed against his chest. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically, and in the next moment, his entire body retreated thousands of meters. As soon as he stopped, the torch dragon armor on his chest cracked open, and the body beneath it instantly cracked into a spider web. Yi Xian looked up at the grave, and there was a middle-aged man standing at the entrance. The middle-aged man suddenly disappeared, and Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. He suddenly withdrew the Sumeru shield, and then he pushed it forward. The middle-aged man's fist smashed against the Sumeru shield. Bang! Yi Xian was instantly sent flying with the shield, and the moment he flew out, the shield directly cracked into several pieces. Chapter 1059. After Yi Xian stopped, his expression became extremely grave. The Sumeru shield had been broken. Yi Xian looked up at the middle-aged man not far away. The middle-aged man wore a black robe with 2 black dragons embroidered on it. On his head, there was a pitch-black horn. The middle-aged man ignored Yi Xian and looked at a Mu not far away. There was a trace of fear in his eyes. A Mu retreated to Yi Xian's side. She used her arm to gently nudge Yi Xian's shoulder. "Are you all right?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "So strong." A Mu nodded. "He's the sky dragon of the celestials." Yi Xian turned to look at Amu. "Sky dragon? Demon beast?" Amu nodded. "Yes. Dragon." Yi Xian was silent. No wonder the other party was so strong. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Can you beat him?" Amu turned to Yi Xian. "I don't know how to fight." "Don't know how to fight?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said, "Are you sure?" Amu blinked. "The high priestess doesn't know how to fight." Yi Xian looked at Amu. Soon he was sure. This woman really didn't know how to fight. The high priestess didn't know how to fight? Then how could she survive? At this moment, the middle-aged man not far away suddenly said, "The high priestess is of noble status in the Wu clan. Although she doesn't know how to fight, a word from her can make all the experts in the Wu clan go through fire and water for her." Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man walked slowly towards him and Amu. Amu was very direct. She hid behind Yi Xian. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. "Miss Amu, aren't you going to call some people out to help?" Amu shook his head. "They're all asleep. I can't wake them up." Yi Xian said solemnly, "I might not be able to beat them." Amu hesitated for a moment before saying, "Get that woman from before. She can beat him." A woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian was speechless. He also wanted to be called Lady in Plain Dress. The problem was that he didn't even know where she was. Right at this moment, the middle-aged man suddenly smiled and said, "So the high priest woke up first." Amu looked at the middle-aged man. "The person beside me is not simple. If you hurt him, your celestial clan will be exterminated." The middle-aged man turned to look at Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and sneered, "What a joke." As soon as he finished speaking, he punched out. Boom! A fist print swept across the field like a tsunami. The powerful pressure directly caused the surrounding space to boil. As the target of the fist print, Yi Xian immediately felt a suffocating feeling. What a powerful physical body! Yi Xian immediately put away the Sumeru shield and torch dragon armor. Soon, countless deathly auras suddenly appeared around his body. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. At this moment, the fist print directly arrived in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not dodge and allowed the fist to strike his body. Boom! Yi Xian retreated over 100 feet. When he stopped, he was completely unharmed. Undying body. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man in the distance frowned slightly. "Your physical body." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly leaped up. Holding the executing heaven sword with both hands, he slashed down. The middle-aged man did not dodge and punched out. Boom! The sword light was forced to a stop. At this moment, a sword slashed down on the middle-aged man's head. Boom! The executing heaven sword trembled violently, and Yi Xian returned to his original position. Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. Qingqing, Yi family's ancestral hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. But at this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a family matter, what are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder directly. However, she did not leave, and instead mustered up her courage to enter the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the family, and we do not know if he is dead or alive. But now, the family is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is really unfair." "Impudent!" The great elder suddenly raged. "Discard him or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder said coldly, "Then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi mansion rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years, even now he is fighting for the family, and the family is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince, and it is everyone's wish. Why are you shouting?" With that, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What is your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards, and you will be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. Immediately, he grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu saw something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark, not knowing what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed, and he quickly looked at Yi Lang. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger, and before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man." As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage, and in the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall take over. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you remove him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look directly at the great elder. However, she did not leave, and instead mustered up her courage to enter the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we do not know if he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove him from his position. This is unfair." Impudent! The great elders suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard laughed coldly. "Young Master Yi Lang is the heir, and it is the wish of everyone. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage, and in the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping! Chapter 1060. At this moment, Yi Xian hadn't completely lost his reason. Because he wasn't too angry. As long as he wasn't extremely angry, then he wouldn't allow himself to lose his reason. However, it was also because of this that he was unable to utilize the power of his bloodline to its fullest. Yi Xian's expression was solemn as he gazed at the heavenly dragon in the sky. This fellow has transformed. And he's even become so huge. How do I fight him? In the sky, the enormous dragon looked down and roared madly. Strands of dragon might swept down from the sky. Along with the appearance of the dragon might, the entire sky became illusory. Yi Xian turned to look at Amu. "Can you help?" Amu hesitated for a moment and said, "I really don't know how to fight. It's usually others who fight for me." Yi Xian was speechless. "You don't know how to fight?" He almost wanted to curse. Meanwhile, Amu said, "However, I can help you become stronger." Yi Xian was slightly stunned. "Help me become stronger?" Amu nodded. She walked over to Yi Xian, closed her eyes slowly, and chanted a bunch of incantations. After a short while, she suddenly tapped the center of Yi Xian's brows. "In the name of the sorcerer god, I bestow upon you the power of the sorcerer god." Bang! In an instant, numerous mysterious black runes suddenly appeared on Yi Xian's face. At the same time, strands of powerful energy erupted from within his body like a volcano. Power! At this moment, Yi Xian was stunned. He felt that his body possessed boundless energy. This energy was so strong that he'd never possessed it before. Meanwhile, the dragon might in the sky had arrived. Yi Xian raised his head and punched. Rumble! The entire sky trembled violently, and the boundless dragon might instantly vanished. Yi Xian looked at his right hand. At this moment, his strength was at least 10 times stronger than before. 10 times? What sort of heaven-defying secret technique is this? Right at this moment, the heavenly dragon suddenly roared once more, and then it dove down from the sky. Yi Xian snapped out of his thoughts and stamped his right foot hard. Boom! Wherever he stomped his feet, an abyss was formed. In the sky, Yi Xian punched the sky dragon. Directly clash head-on. In front of this heavenly dragon, Yi Xian was as tiny as an ant. However, the moment he threw a punch, the heavenly dragon was forced to stop on the spot. The heavenly dragon roared. He fiercely slapped his claw towards Yi Xian, but at this time, Yi Xian suddenly roared and punched out again. He had used his full strength in this punch. Rumble! With this punch, the heavenly dragon was forced back by Yi Xian's punch. At the same time, the dragon scales on the heavenly dragon's body exploded inch by inch. Blood splattered everywhere. It was a spectacular sight. After retreating for a full 10,000 feet, the heavenly dragon finally came to a stop. However, at this moment, his entire body was filled with cuts and bruises. In the sky, Yixian looked at his own fist and felt a little dazed. This power was too unreal. In the distance, the heavenly dragon looked at Yixian with fear in his eyes. As though he had thought of something, he suddenly looked at Amu below. Amu's eyelids twitched, and she hurriedly looked at Yixian. "Save me!" Just as she finished speaking, the heavenly dragon suddenly swept its tail towards her. At this moment, Yixian suddenly appeared in front of Amu. Yixian was about to attack when Amu pointed at the executing heaven sword in Yixian's hand. "In the name of the sorcerer god, I bestow upon you a divine blade." Boom! The executing heaven sword suddenly trembled violently, turning from blood red to dark black. On the tip of the sword, a mysterious black light flickered. Yixian was stunned. In the next moment, he leaped and slashed down with his sword. In the sky, the heavenly dragon's tail was directly severed by Yixian's sword. Blood flowed like a waterfall, dyeing the sky red. Yixian was stunned. The executing heaven sword had become so strong? Yixian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand, feeling a little unreal. At this moment, Amu suddenly said, "Kill him." Yixian looked up at the heavenly dragon. The heavenly dragon turned and ran. Clearly, it was afraid. The heavenly dragon was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the sky. At this moment, Amu suddenly pointed at Yixian's back. "In the name of the sorcerer god, I bestow upon you divine speed." Boom! A mysterious force suddenly surged into Yixian's body. Yixian was stunned. In the next moment, he disappeared into the sky. About 2 breaths later, Yixian appeared in the sky, and in his hand, he dragged a long dragon. Yixian landed in front of Amu, and Amu ran to the heavenly dragon excitedly. She kicked the heavenly dragon's head. "Get up! Continue fighting! Weren't you very arrogant?" Yixian hesitated for a moment, and then said, "He's already dead." Amu blinked and then said, "Pull out his dragon tendon and drink his dragon blood. Your body will become even stronger." Yixian hesitated for a moment, and then said, "That's not very good, is it?" Amu was about to speak, but Yixian had already walked in front of the heavenly dragon and started to drain its blood. Amu was speechless. Heavenly dragon blood. In a short while, Yixian drained the heavenly dragon's blood and placed it in the prison pagoda. Then he began to extract the dragon tendon. Amu watched excitedly from the side. Not only did she watch, but she also instructed Yixian on how to do it. "This is dragon marrow. It's very nutritious. Don't drop it. This is dragon liver. If stir-fried, it'll be very delicious. Keep it for me. This is dragon heart. After eating it, your heart will become very strong. Eat it. This is dragon's penis." Oh, Yixian put something away without batting an eyelid. A moment later, the heavenly dragon was cleanly dissected by Yixian. Then, Yixian set up a large pot and started to stew the dragon meat. In a short while, the fragrance of meat wafted out. Amu looked at the dragon meat in the pot excitedly. "It smells very good. Unfortunately, it's not an 8-division heavenly dragon. If it was an 8-division heavenly dragon, it would definitely be more fragrant." Yixian looked at Amu. 8-division heavenly dragon? Amu nodded. The heavenly dragon is a member of the heavenly clan. Among the heavenly dragons, the 8-division heavenly dragon is the strongest. Look at this. He has only cultivated 2 dragon marks. Among the ancestors of the heavenly dragon clan, he can only be considered average. Average? Yixian's eyelids twitched. He hesitated for a moment, and then asked, "Are there many dragons in the heavenly dragon clan?" Amu shrugged. "They're all right. Just a few hundred." "A few hundred?" Yixian's expression froze. Amu looked at Yixian. "Are you afraid?" Yixian looked at the pot of dragon meat in front of him and said, "The heavenly dragon clan doesn't hold grudges, right?" Amu said, "They're very vengeful. They're small in number, so they're especially protective. There was once a person who injured a heavenly dragon and was chased by more than 100 heavenly dragons of the heavenly dragon clan for decades. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then pointed at the pot of dragon meat. Has this happened before? Amu blinked. It's never happened before. Yi Xian said indifferently, anyway, they haven't woken up yet. Amu shook his head. You're wrong. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Amu said, they should be waking up soon. No, some of them are already awake. Yi Xian said, just eat one of their dragons. They won't be so petty, right? Amu looked at Yi Xian and chuckled, not saying a word. Yi Xian, Amu suddenly said, it's cooked. With that, she took out a pair of chopsticks, picked up a piece of meat and placed it in her mouth. A moment later, she slowly closed her eyes. Delicious. Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. Aren't you going to eat? Yi Xian was silent. Amu said, are you afraid? Yi Xian said indifferently, what am I afraid of? With that, he picked up a piece of meat and placed it in his mouth. It had to be said that the taste of the dragon meat was indeed good. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Miss Amu, is the power you gave me a secret technique? Amu said, you can say that. How is it? Is it powerful? Yi Xian said, very powerful. Can you teach me? Amu shook her head. No, only the high priest knows. Yi Xian pointed at himself. Can I be the high priest? Amu looked at Yi Xian and shook her head. No, because you don't have pure Wu clan blood. But, you can be a witch's servant. Yi Xian frowned. A witch's servant? Amu smiled. I'm the high priest's attendant. Yi Xian's expression became strange. As if knowing what Yi Xian was thinking, Amu suddenly said, hey, don't look like that. In our Wu clan, the status of a witch's servant is very, very high, second only to the Wu clan's chief and high priest. Do you know how many people in the Wu clan want to be a witch's servant? Yi Xian asked, what are the benefits of being a witch's servant? The high priest said, a witch's servant can gain great power through the high priest, just like what happened just now. Yi Xian was silent. He knew that this high priest was equivalent to a support. He could only support and had no combat power. But this support was a bit strong. Speaking of which, after being strengthened by Amu, his strength was definitely not weaker than a ruler. No, it was definitely much stronger than an ordinary ruler. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at Amu. Is there a more powerful secret technique? Amu nodded. Yes. But you are still weak now. You can't withstand a more powerful secret technique. In short, if you follow me, you will have a lot of benefits. Yi Xian said, you want me to be your witch's servant? Amu blinked. Are you not willing? Yi Xian said, I don't know how to serve people. Amu smiled. I don't need you to serve me. Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. The Wu clan has many treasures. I know where they are. Yi Xian blinked. Can I use them? Then borrow them. Borrow them. Amu smiled. If you are willing to be my witch's servant, you can use all the treasures of the Wu clan. Yi Xian suddenly asked, why do you want me to be your witch's servant? Amu blinked. Yi Xian said, don't lie. Amu was silent for a moment. Then she said, I am in danger now. I need you to protect me. Yi Xian frowned. Very dangerous? Amu nodded. Logically speaking, I shouldn't have woken up at this time. But I woke up at this time. My Wu clan's experts haven't woken up yet. Yi Xian said, do your Wu clan have many enemies? Amu nodded. Many. Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. I have divined for you. Your fate is very strong. If I am with you, my fate will be very strong too. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Then, have you divined that it might be dangerous to follow me? Amu blinked. I haven't divined it yet. Yi Xian was about to speak. At this moment, an extremely powerful dragon aura appeared in the distant horizon. Sky Dragon. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. At this moment, Amu smiled. Don't be afraid. Hearing that, Yi Xian's heart relaxed. He looked at Amu. Do you have a way to deal with it? Amu smiled faintly. She picked up a piece of dragon bone and started gnawing on it. This incoming dragon should be a 4-vein dragon. A conservative estimate would be that it's at least 5 times stronger than the previous dragon. However, don't panic. This dragon's strength is far from being comparable to the girl in the plain dress behind you. Call her here. She can destroy this kind of dragon with a flick of her finger. Yi Xian looked at Amu. Miss Amu, I want to say that I can't contact her. Amu blinked. Are you serious? Yi Xian nodded. I'm very serious. And, let me tell you, I'm a little panicked now. Amu put down the dragon meat in her hand. She looked at the dragon meat in the big pot in front of her and said, maybe, we're a little cruel. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1061. In front of the cauldron, the aroma of dragon meat wafted. In the sky, the dragon might was getting closer and closer. Amu suddenly got up and walked behind Yi Xian. She lay on Yi Xian's back. Run! Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all. He got up and ran. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the distance. After Yi Xian and Amu left, an old man suddenly appeared in the field. When the old man saw the dragon meat in the cauldron, his face instantly turned ferocious. No! His voice was like thunder, shaking the sky. A moment later, the old man looked up into the distance. His eyes were red, and his expression was twisted. The Heavenly Dragon clan had never suffered such humiliation. Ah! The old man suddenly roared. In the next moment he directly rushed out. In the distance, Yi Xian carried Amu on his back and ran wildly. On the way, Yi Xian said, Miss Amu, did none of your Wu clan experts wake up? Amu looked around and shook her head. No. Yi Xian's face darkened. Then why did you wake up? After a moment of silence, Amu glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. At this moment, a powerful dragon might suddenly came from behind. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's face changed. It's coming! Yi Xian sped up. However, the dragon might was getting closer and closer. Obviously, the other party's speed was faster than his. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Miss Amu, do you have a way? Amu glanced behind her, then slowly closed her eyes. She silently chanted an incantation. After a moment, she suddenly pointed at the back of Yi Xian's head. In the name of the sorcerer god, I bestow you with divine speed. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian's speed suddenly increased. This time, his speed increased by at least 10 times. When his speed increased, Yi Xian suddenly felt a tearing pain all over his body. The speed was too fast, so fast that even his immortal body found it hard to resist. Yi Xian was a little shocked. He had to say that Amu's ability was too terrifying. Soon, he discovered that he had shaken off the heavenly dragon behind him. Behind him, the old man suddenly stopped. He looked at Yi Xian, who had already disappeared, and his expression was incomparably savage. After a while, he suddenly roared out in rage, and a series of dragon roars reverberated through the sky. In the distance, Yi Xian, who heard the dragon roar, suddenly asked, What is he doing? Amu hesitated for a moment before saying, He's calling for a dragon. Call it a dragon. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Did I poke a hornet's nest? Amu nodded. Heavenly dragon race once faced the most. You stewed their dragon. To the heavenly dragon race, this is a humiliation, an unprecedented humiliation. If you were to fall into their hands, you would be in deep trouble. Yi Xian said, You also ate their dragon meat. Amu blinked, then said, We can't fall into their hands. Yi Xian nodded. He increased his speed once again, and not long later, he arrived at a valley. Above the valley, dark clouds covered the sky, and within the valley, there was a gust of wind. It was obvious that this was not a good place. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then turned around and left. Amu suddenly said, What are you doing? Yi Xian said, This place is not a good place, let's change places. Amu said, There's no danger. Yi Xian asked, Are you sure? Amu looked at the valley and nodded, No. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He carried a Mu to the depths of the valley. In the depths of the valley he saw some bones. Yi Xian glanced at the bones, then said, "Miss Amu, you have to wake up your Wu clan experts." Amu said, "They have to wake up on their own." Qingqing Yi family, ancestral temple. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the heir will be removed and Yi Lang will inherit it. The one who spoke was an old man dressed in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi mansion's elders. But at this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral temple. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral temple, asking timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the heir. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for?" Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent! The Great Elders suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new heir Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder coldly replied, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi Mansion's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists. "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even at this moment, the clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new heir, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of heir. It is the wish of everyone. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, smiled and said, "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 personal guards. From now on, you will be my personal guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the ancestral hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who rushed back from Nanshan Hill. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder squinted his eyes, his face was dark, and no one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu's head spun, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position, and it's everyone's wish. What are you shouting for?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and said with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. From now on, you'll be my personal guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through water and tread on fire for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders began to frown. The great elder's eyes narrowed, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Poof! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, barking, "Your man." As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Peng! You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.